Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. What bad intentions could Batman have? Chapter 61. With my help. Before he finished speaking, Bane went around to the back of the tank and pointed to the half-palm print deeply imprinted on the armor next to the entrance door of the tank that was obviously replaced, and said, "This seems to be the tank of the National Guard that I destroyed with my bare hands." How is it possible? Penguin widened his eyes, and this action caused his monocle to fall out of his eye sockets. I am an honest and reliable penguin. How could I take advantage of the fire and sell other people's equipment? The muscle freak with exploding muscles responded in silence. Okay. Under the other party's gaze, Penguin raised his hands in surrender. Yes, I picked up those equipment, but I repaired them all. It's very simple, just replace some armor parts. Bane didn't say anything. The batch of tanks he destroyed were all severely damaged. Even if Penguin took away these equipment, he was able to repair them in a short time, which proved his strength. The transaction was going on happily, and Bane's men were moving the weapons brought by Penguin. By the way, Bane, I have something to tell you. The Penguin puffed on his cigar and put his monocle back into his eye socket. Did you know that a nuclear bomb of mine was stolen recently? Nuclear weapons. Bane paused. He immediately said, "You actually have such a dangerous thing." The Penguin narrowed his eyes slightly. This action was very deterrent. Even though he was an ugly thing less than 1.5 meters tall, short, fat, and with a hooked nose, this action of smoking and narrowing his eyes still made people's hair stand on end. "Don't you know that my nuclear weapons were stolen?" Bane immediately asked him back, "Should I know?" The two of them stared at each other for a while, and the atmosphere began to freeze slowly. The Penguin and Bane's men beside him were smart and had already begun to see some clues. They put down the weapons they handed over and stared at their respective bosses. Ha 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 ha. Penguin suddenly burst into laughter. "It's okay, good friend, I just want to ask you, if you know where the thief who stole my nuclear weapons is, remember to notify me as soon as possible so that I can rush over and tear him into pieces." But Bane still tensed his muscles and looked at Penguin coldly. Ha ha ha. Penguin laughed dryly twice and stopped talking. He casually called a little brother and said directly to Bane, "Let the armed helicopters on standby above us withdraw." I'm afraid this was not done by Bane. There is no need for them to point missiles at our dear customers. Bane's movements relaxed. The atmosphere began to become harmonious, and the tense confrontation disappeared. Penguin touched his chin and rolled his eyes. "My friend, these weapons may greatly enhance your strength," he said. "But I don't think you'll be defeated like the countless guys who have challenged Batman over the years." Seeing Bane look a little gloomy, he didn't care. He saw that Bane's emotions were not written on his face as he showed on the surface, but the other party liked to play a brainless muscle man, so why not play along? Anyway, his goal was to allow Bane to fight bats for longer so that he could continue to sell goods, so he said bluntly, "For the sake of our partnership, Bane, I have seen many talents from Arkham before, and they all said the same thing. Bane is definitely not Batman, so let me point out a simple fact to you, my handsome ally. No matter how many killers and strongmen you bring from Santa Prisca Island and how many scum you recover from Blackgate Prison, these lunatics in Arkham have experienced worse situations, and they are not afraid of you." Quote. Bane responded with silence. The following transaction was unremarkable. In a strange silence, this special pair of customers and the merchant completed the handover. "The next batch of weapons will be delivered to you in 2 days, my ally. This time you will need to spend real money to buy it. You know, the super special price of exchanging so many weapons for a corpse only happens once." He gave Bane a price list, which detailed how much money was needed to buy how many weapons, and then the Penguin left in a swagger under Bane's eyes. A few minutes later, in a secluded corner, Bane signaled several of his men to guard the front entrance and put his finger on his headset. "So, my ally, what do you suggest?" "I am not your ally." Bane's headset came with a British accent, like a butler holding a plate, asking politely in a noble manner. "We are just nakedly using each other, Bane. There is no need to tie us together. Are you addicted to playing the game of allies with the Penguin?" Quote. This was an extremely rude taunt, but Bane remained silent in response. "I will provide you with the necessary information and give you money. You only need to repay me and achieve the goal you should have wanted, destroying Batman. This is my goal." The mysterious voice said. No matter what method you use, even if it means destroying Gotham, it doesn't matter. Go and achieve your great cause. I smell the scent of conspiracy. Bane said. I never believe in help without reason. But the mysterious voice ignored him. He continued. The last sum of money for purchasing weapons will be in place soon, and then we will never meet again. Give me as much as possible. Bane said. Of course, Bane, the figure in the dark paused his cane. Enough for you to arm all your men to the teeth. Bane hung up the phone, turned around, and just as he was about to call his men to leave with these weapons, he heard a violent noise. What's going on? Zombie, go check it out. Before the subordinate called Zombie Man by Bane could move, a voice came. That's totally unnecessary. Your name is Bane, right? Puff. A faint laugh came, and Bane frowned. He saw the Zombie Man beside him smiled. Bane silently activated the venom behind him. The dark green juice flowed, slightly raising his body by 2 or 3 inches. Oh, there's no need to be so vigilant. We all have to deal with Batman. We are allies. Puff. Ha 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 ha. Zombie Man suddenly knelt on the ground and began to laugh hysterically. Bane looked at the pale man who appeared in front of him, Joker. Frankly speaking, this was the first time that Penguin visited the Batcave. In most of the past years, his communication with Batman was divided into 2 steps. Step 1. Batman broke into his office directly, and without saying a word, beat him until he fainted. The process was extremely rough and the means were extremely cruel, which made his subordinates who witnessed everything extremely scared. Step 2. After Penguin woke up, he would generally find himself tied up in the Gotham City Police Department, and the file bag beside him was full of criminal evidence collected by Batman. This is not to say that he was not occasionally thrown into the Batcave for temporary detention during Batman's more than 10-year heroic career, and then entered Step 2. But most of the time, he was beaten to a black eye or in a state of shock, so naturally he had no mood or opportunity to examine the furnishings in the cave. Once I think back to the past, why did this Batcave suddenly become a little gloomy? The Penguin held the umbrella in his hand. It was his weapon, which contained deadly mechanisms and poisons, and could even be used as a submachine gun. But when facing Batman, this thing mainly played a psychological comfort role. It was precisely because of this that when Batman kindly invited him to visit the Batcave half an hour ago, he quickly agreed to the other party's request. Although he had to be blindfolded, blocked his ears, and then carried by Batman like a yo-yo in the middle of the high-rise buildings like Tarzan, he still walked into the Batcave conscious for the first time, didn't he? What are you hesitating about, Oswald? The Penguin turned his head and saw Batman's ghostly figure appear beside him. Quote. Hiss. Did Batman gather half of his body from the shadow just now? It was as if some black fine sand made up his body. Did I see it wrong? Batman's expression was a little strange, as if he was enduring some pain. He reached out and patted Penguin's shoulder. Penguin confirmed that it was a human hand, which made him feel a little relieved. Let's go. Penguin continued to move forward nervously. What exactly did Batman want to find him for? Will he torture him later? As he walked, a scene began to emerge in Penguin's mind. He was tied to a cross naked by Batman, and his fat belly was whipped by Batman with dozens of blood marks. Batman grabbed his hair with one hand, dripped candles on his belly, and shouted, "Speak or not," but he was gagged with a ball gag and couldn't say a word. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but shudder. Why don't you leave? Yes, I'm sorry. Quote. After turning around the dark corridor, the ferocious giant dinosaur and the dark blue bat computer finally appeared in front of Penguin. He widened his eyes and saw the person standing in front of the computer. That person, she is Harley Quinn. Why is it you? Penguin almost bit his tongue. Why are you in the Batcave? He looked around. Poison Ivy, Killer Croc, and you, I remember you, you are Deadshot. Cheshire Cat, a famous rookie mercenary. He turned his eyes to the ventriloquist who was squatting next to him and trying to disguise himself as a dog, Arnold. Hey, isn't this Oswald? Oh, you wrinkled little prickly pear, how are you doing tonight? Harley happily turned over in the seat that belonged to Batman. No matter how you are doing, I had a great night anyway. She climbed upside down on the operating table of the Batcomputer, then took out a recorder and pressed it. Then the recorder came out with the audio of Batman that was obviously spliced by her. "I, Batman, just want to have love with bats," Harley said. "Try this again." She pressed the recorder twice again. Bat right pointing arrow. Computer immediately obeys right pointing arrow. Harley's right pointing arrow orders. Nothing happened. The Penguin looked at a weirdo with a candle head mask coming over with a tray of food, and said in a weird British accent, "I'm afraid I have to remind you, Miss Quinn, that if you want to give a voice command to the Batcomputer, you must first say, 'Hey, Batcomputer.'" "Ah, I can't stand it anymore." Poison Ivy slapped her forehead. She manipulated the green plants to lift Harley Quinn, who was saying, "Thank you, candle-head weirdo, but I want to eat pizza," while stuffing a sandwich into her mouth, upside down from the Batcomputer, and threw it next to Killer Croc, who was feasting on the table next to her. "That's enough, Harley. Maybe enough beef and roast suckling pig can fill your mouth. Do you want to eat beef legs?" Killer Croc said. The Penguin felt that the world was really crazy today. "Oh, Batman, I forgot to tell you something last time. Dog Welder has been missing since the last massacre in the swamp, and I haven't found him." Penguin saw Robin sliding over on a sliding chair, "But it's not important anyway, right?" He held a large piece of roast chicken in his hand, took a bite directly, then kicked the ground and slid away again. The ventriloquist squatted beside him, with a bowl of barbecue on the ground in front of him. Death Shooter sat at another temporary table, enjoying Western food elegantly. Seeing the Penguin's eyes sweeping over, he actually raised his glass to greet him. "How is this, that?" Penguin opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but what he wanted to say was stuck in his trachea. "Relax, Oswald, we have something more important to talk about." Chen Dao brought him a glass of champagne. "Want a drink?" Penguin took it in a daze. Chen Dao organized his words. "Well, the main reason I called you here this time is that I hope you can help sell out the Scarecrow." Quote. "Impossible." Penguin's messy mind immediately came to its senses. He said, "Don't you know the relationship between Scarecrow and me? He is my beloved friend and brother ally." The fat dwarf said righteously, "How can I sell him out?" Killer Croc watched the scene in front of him with interest. 3 minutes later. "Your bank card has arrived 500 million. Penguin read the bank arrival text message calmly, and he coughed lightly as if nothing had happened. "I can help you trick Scarecrow." The Penguin presented facts and reasoned. "But the problem is that Scarecrow is not a fool, and he is not my subordinate who can be summoned and dismissed at will. Batman, why do you believe that Scarecrow can be tricked out by me?" He said, "After all, Klein is a cunning madman. If you go to him without a legitimate reason, you will only alert the enemy. I've been prepared for this." The Penguin heard Batman say. Before, the Clown and the Scarecrow teamed up to kidnap Mayor Carlo, but as their relationship broke down and they attacked each other, when the Scarecrow was beaten black and blue by the Clown, Mayor Carlo got rid of the control of the fear gas and has now returned home safely. Although he has neurasthenia and clown phobia. Robin, who slid over from the chair next to him, added, "But based on my understanding of the Scarecrow, he will never give up." The Penguin heard Batman's calm analysis. This is the Batman he is familiar with, cold and alert, like a cold machine, who knows the psychology of these villains like them and can easily predict all their actions. Such a Batman is really terrible, and he is sincerely afraid of such a Batman. "We have to. Ding da da ding da." He turned his head and shouted to Harley Quinn. "Harley, if you play this kind of music again, I will kick you out of the Batcave." Poison Ivy began to chase Harley, and the two women quarreled. The Penguin barely maintained a serious expression on his face. "Therefore, I judge that Scarecrow will find a way to recapture Mayor Carlo." Chen Dao turned his head and continued. "Scarecrow is an extremely conceited criminal. He is obsessed with fear and obsessed with fear. For him, the fear that is not pulled to the full is imperfect. Therefore, if he wants to stew a pot of delicious fear soup, Mayor Carlo as the nominal head of a city will be an indispensable condiment. Especially when he has had this condiment before, the pursuit of perfect fear will make him unable to tolerate the situation without Mayor Carlo. Even if he already has more capable the weapon that can threaten and intimidate Gotham, but he will still pursue a more perfect intimidation at all costs. This is the inevitable result of his mental illness." Quote. Penguin heard Batman continue. Well, you also heard me say that Scarecrow may have another weapon that can threaten Gotham more. Yes, in fact, we initially suspect that the person who stole your nuclear bomb is Scarecrow. Quote. Chen Dao showed the analysis report issued by Tim to Penguin. Scarecrow has the ability and motivation. Penguin recalled the appearance of Scarecrow when he appeared behind him silently, secretly confirming Batman's statement. In Gotham City, no ordinary person can resist Scarecrow's fear gas, and the other party's ability to instill great fear in others has brought him unparalleled talent in torture. If there is anyone in Gotham City who may know the secret of his nuclear bomb, Scarecrow is undoubtedly one of them. But he still doesn't understand what Batman is going to do. So, Klein will find a way to capture Mayor Carlo, so you set a trap in Mayor Carlo's house. What's the point of looking for me? Well, what I mean is that although Scarecrow is sick, he is not a fool. If we can think of this, then we cannot rule out the possibility that Scarecrow also guessed that we would think of this. Penguin saw Batman cough lightly. Therefore, if we set a trap directly in Mayor Carlo's house, Scarecrow may not fall into the trap. He will be roundabout. When we are forced to weaken the protection of Mayor Carlo because of other things he has done, Klein, who has been waiting for a long time, will suddenly take action and kidnap Mayor Carlo. So, to be honest, Penguin still didn't understand what Batman wanted to say. So, in order to prevent Scarecrow from kidnapping Mayor Carlo, we kidnapped Mayor Carlo first. Quote. Penguin was stunned and watched Batman drive away Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy, who were playing on the sofa, and then pulled out a huge drawer from under the sofa. The next second, Penguin slapped himself on the head. In the drawer was a living person, naked, tied up, and wearing a ball gag. It was Mayor Carlo, who was frightened because he had just escaped from the clutches of the Joker and the Scarecrow and was supposed to be in bed at home. The other party had his eyes closed, and there was a tear in the corner of his eye, as if he was still immersed in a nightmare from which he could not wake up. I really admire you, Batman, Penguin said. Therefore, we need a guy that Scarecrow has enough trust, and he will claim that he has kidnapped Mayor Carlo and take the initiative to give this seasoning to Scarecrow, so as to lure the other party to show up. Penguin immediately understood that this person was him, Penguin. Of course, given our Professor Klein's excellent social, wooing, and leadership talents, we must anticipate the possibility that Klein has other helpers. Penguin was pulled to the cabinet next to him by Batman. He saw the other party take out a bottle of dark yellow potion and said, "This is a mud-softening solvent specially developed for the Clayface. Once Basil, the villain Clayface's original name, drinks this, his body will no longer be able to harden and will become as soft as a piece of slime." He saw the other party took out another USB flash drive, a virus specially developed for Victor's, the villain Mr. Freeze's original name, cryogenic life support armor. As long as you secretly connect it to Victor's cryogenic armor, this virus will tamper with the armor's core program and turn Victor into a cooked prawn in minutes. No hardware insertion is required, just get close enough and it will automatically hack in. The Penguin had already thought of how Mr. Freeze wailed and collapsed to the ground, and he swallowed his saliva. How insidious. A nuclear magnetic jammer specially made for Garfield, the original name of the villain Firefly. Once this thing is turned on, his flamethrower and flamethrower armor will no longer be able to ignite, and all the equipment on his body will immediately misfire, but be careful when using it. He heard Batman continue to say, "This thing will make the flight system of Garfield's armor invalid, which means that once it is turned on, he will immediately fall from the sky like a kite with a broken string. If he falls unlucky, he will die. You have to turn this thing on before he takes off." Sodium hydroxide solution, a strong alkaline solution, can react with phosphorus to produce phosphine. I believe such a large bottle will definitely make Dr. Phosphorus sick enough. Have you seen this potion? It is specially used to deal with Dr. Langstone, the original name of the villain Man-Bat. It only takes one shot to temporarily restore him from that superhumanoid bat to a human. The Penguin looked numbly at Batman talking about the props that could make Gotham villains sick to death. He saw the other person's mouth open, his mouth drooling, and a smile like an orgasm. Hey, you're excited, right? You're very excited, right? So, Oswald, are you joining this plan? When Batman asked this question, Penguin felt that everyone had put down their work, and pairs of blue eyes stared at him, making him feel like he was surrounded by wolves. Okay, I'll join. He raised his hands in surrender. For the Joker, the world is a huge arcade. Bane sat at the desk, concentrating on reading the booklet Batman wrote for him. Life is nothing more than a game coin in the arcade for the Joker. The reason he still keeps it is only because he hasn't found a fun machine. When he finds it, he will spend it without hesitation. The muscle man carefully picked up his thick fingers, turned the book to the next page, and continued reading. He is a liar full of lies, so when you face the Joker, always remember, don't use conventional thinking to speculate on the Joker's behavior. Does the Joker have a plan? Although he often claims that he doesn't, there is no doubt that the Joker has a plan. He just has no goal, which makes him more difficult to deal with than those ordinary criminals who use plans. I have to admit that the Joker once compared himself to a mad dog chasing a truck, which is very appropriate. Generally speaking, plans need to have processes and goals. For people who like to make plans, such as Bane, achieving goals must be your ultimate ideal result. The so-called plan is just a means to achieve the goal. Bane smiled softly, and he didn't even notice that at that moment, the smile on his face was like a girl who saw a love letter, but then in the next moment, this smile turned into a murderous intent as excited as a beast. Batman almost openly instigated in the pamphlet. The Joker is more difficult, ordinary criminals who use plans. But even if Bane knew the other party's purpose, he would still be aroused. However, these emotions were killed by him in an instant, which could neither shake him nor stop him from continuing to read on. But for the Joker, the goal is not the goal, the implementation of the plan is the goal. He enjoys the process of implementing the plan, which will make him climax. He has no so-called worldly desires, no concrete, realistic goals. Money, power, he wants nothing. Just like the dog that catches up with the truck does not really want to do anything to the truck. If we must say that the Joker has a goal of a plan, then we can only say that he wants to falsify all rules and order, and prove that chaos and evil are the essence of the world. So, do you understand? He hates and ridicules all rules and order include but are not limited to the plans that you, Bane, are going to defeat Batman. For the Joker, it is almost instinctive to destroy other people's plans. For the Joker, other people's plans and rules and even any codes are all rotten jokes. Thank you for your reminder. Bane thought silently. I have understood what kind of guy the Joker is. Knock knock knock. A knock on the door interrupted Bane's thoughts. His subordinate, the caveman, came in and reported to him, Bane, the Batman uniform has been made. Bane nodded. I know. He stood up. The caveman moved his mouth for a while, and finally spoke. Bane, do we really want to cooperate with the Joker and divide the entire city together? Bane did not answer him. He walked out of the room. It was not until he disappeared at the corner of the corridor that the caveman heard his voice floating in the air. Who knows? Lincoln March walked in the gloomy corridor wearing the claw uniform of the Court of Owls. The bright moonlight shone through the broken and dirty glass on the windowsill, casting mottled shadows on the creaking wooden floor, reflecting on his silver-white streamlined armor, and reflecting the blood red of the big owl eyes on his helmet. This is an abandoned hospital, built by Martha Wayne and Thomas Wayne. There are many such abandoned hospitals in Gotham. In the reconstruction plan called O'Sullivan Plan, there are not only hospitals, but also schools, community colleges, and public facilities. They form a huge network. If all are built, it will be enough to transform Gotham. Well, these are things that will never be completed. So it is meaningless to talk about what changes these things will bring to Gotham once they are built. But since the couple was killed in Crime Alley decades ago, the urban renewal plan invested by the couple has also been aborted. Lincoln March shook his head. He is now completing the task assigned by the court, and he should not be distracted at this time. But he still couldn't help but recall what Bruce Wayne said the last time he met him. You know what, Mr. March, forget it, I want to call you Lincoln directly, can I call you that? Did you know that owls will occupy other people's nests? They murder the parents of ordinary birds, then raise their children, and then cut out their hearts and lungs to fill their stomachs when the time is right. Those stupid little birds not only surrendered to the claws of the owl, surrendered to the claws of the enemy who killed their parents, but also obeyed the owl's orders to murder their brothers. The final result is of course that both of them were eaten as lunch by the owl. The direction of these words is too obvious. This is no longer a hint, it is almost a naked indication that Bruce Wayne must have discovered his identity in the words he said. Lincoln March shook his head. Forget it, now is not the time to think about these. He pushed open the door of a room. The corridor outside was still dark and dreary, but the lights were on inside. Welcome, welcome, Claus from the Court of Owls, you have chosen a suitable partner. Lincoln March narrowed his eyes slightly. In the center of the room, the Scarecrow sat in the main seat with a big horse and a golden sword. And next to him, Lincoln March's eyes swept over. Killer Croc, Ventriloquist, Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy. Strange, how come these four villains who have nothing to do with each other are sitting together, and they even have the posture of forming a faction? Mr. Freeze Victor's status is slightly special, and he sits directly next to Scarecrow. Lincoln's eyes swept through one by one, and the room was full of Arkham's lunatics. He had to admit that Scarecrow was still good at leadership. After all, not everyone can gather so many lunatics. I said, there will be no problem for the Court of Owls to choose me, and we can divide this city together. He walked forward with champagne in his hand. A strong organization needs a strong cooperation. I am only responsible for the inspection, Scarecrow. Lincoln interrupted him without hesitation. You must first prove to the court that you have the ability to control the entire city, and our cooperation will officially begin. Although the other party was very polite, he didn't know why, but he had an inexplicable feeling of disgust, and he didn't know what was wrong with him. He didn't want to admit it. Deep down in his heart, he was thinking, with so many villains, can Batman really handle them? The Scarecrow didn't care about the other party's indifference. It's an honor to invite you, Mr. Claw, we are about to get a brand new bargaining chip. He said. Oswald just sent a message, he will send our Mayor Carlo. My name is Jonathan Crane, also known as Scarecrow. To me, this is a crazy world, it always is. Madness on the left, chaos on the right. For the madmen of Arkham, they don't understand unity and cooperation at all. Most of the time, even if they cooperate briefly, they will soon start to kill each other, and then one madman after another will destroy themselves, until in the end, all that is left is the lost potential of Gotham. Arkham people are too easy to be victimized by their own arrogance, so. That's why I have to make sure this time is different. This time, Scarecrow will be the commander-in-chief. And as far as I know, a good commander always has a backup plan. I was planning this as early as when I worked with the Joker. Oswald, my old friend, you really gave me a big surprise. The Scarecrow gave the Penguin a warm hug, and then smiled at Mayor Carlo, who was tied up with a smelly sock stuffed in his mouth. Woo, what a timely gift, for us who want to conquer the whole city. The Scarecrow took out the fear potion and sprayed a large cloud of mist directly on Mayor Carlo's face. The poor guy let out a wailing sound like he was dying, and fainted neatly. It's no use fainting, the Scarecrow said, fiddling with poor Mayor Carlo, while silently observing the two guys next to the Penguin with his peripheral vision. Death Shooter, a mercenary. He knew him. The one next to him was the Cheshire Cat, and he also knew him. It made sense for them to appear next to the Penguin. This time the Penguin really didn't seem to be playing any tricks. Of course, Klein, we are deep partners. The Penguin smiled and walked to the middle of the villains of Arkham and picked up the champagne by himself. After all, we are all members of Arkham. He first poured a few glasses of wine for Poison Ivy and Harley, and greeted them very familiarly, and then toasted them one by one, and the atmosphere was harmonious and friendly. Victor, Mr. Freeze looked at him coldly. Don't be so cold. I don't believe you, Copper Pat. Mr. Freeze said. Given your many betrayals in the past, do you think I really think you will join our camp obediently? Don't be like this, Victor. Scarecrow said. Penguin is our important partner, give me some face. Mr. Freeze poured the drink given by Penguin directly on the ground, opened the hood, and blew out a breath of cold air, and the drink that had not yet landed on the ground instantly froze into ice chips. The Penguin smiled. It's okay. He walked to the other side happily. Wow, isn't this the Clayface? Is there something wrong with the other party? Scarecrow turned around quietly and looked at Man-Bat. Did he attract Bane's people? Man-Bat shook his head. No, Copperpat is very honest. Except for his two bodyguards, he didn't bring any helpers. Bane's army showed no signs of mobilization, nor did they use any weapons to attack. Copperpat didn't betray us. I think he knows that if he does something, so many of us can kill him in an instant. Scarecrow nodded. The banquet was still going on, singing and music were playing, and the lunatics of Arkham gathered together. Scarecrow raised his glass with satisfaction. This is the right way to cooperate with others. He found that his choice to cooperate with the Joker before was too stupid. The Joker was too strong, and he couldn't control the other party's behavior at all. It has to be these people, these ordinary Arkham compatriots, who are more submissive, easier to control, and easier to persuade than the Joker. But Scarecrow never thought that they were also weaker, more vulnerable, and easier to defeat than the Joker. My compatriots, to the end of an era and a brand new future. Everyone raised their glasses together. Then suddenly, without any warning, Mr. Freeze screamed loudly under the high temperature of his full body armor. He twisted wildly on the ground, and high-temperature steam came out of the gaps in his armor, burning his body and making him feel miserable. Then, before Firefly, Clayface, and Scarecrow had time to put down their raised glasses, the Arkham companions he recruited almost fell to the ground in an instant. What's going on? This is... He suddenly looked at Penguin. Oswald. Catch him. He loudly gave orders to Killer Croc and Poison Ivy, who were the only compatriots who were not hit. He shouted loudly, "Catch the traitor Penguin, he betrayed us." Okay. He heard Killer Croc say this, which made him feel a little relieved. Who did Penguin turn to? Was it Bane? But none of this mattered. As long as he caught him and tortured him properly, he would be able to fully understand. He wanted to let Penguin taste how terrible the fear toxin was, the ultimate fear. The next second, he was grabbed by Killer Croc. "I want you to catch Penguin." He immediately realized the situation. "Sorry, I'm a traitor." Killer Croc scratched his head and said in a muffled voice. "Me too," Poison Ivy said. "Of course I am too, cute little cotton," Harley smiled. The ventriloquist walked to the side and kicked Mr. Freeze, who was lying on the ground. Bang! His foot kicked off Mr. Freeze's hood directly, making a crisp sound. You guys." Scarecrow's voice sounded a little dull under the linen mask. "It's hard to imagine, what did Bane use to convince you? Do you still think it was Bane?" "Not Bane. There is no point in lying, forget it." Scarecrow shook his head. "Fortunately, I am also prepared." He shouted, "Court of Owls. Where are the claws you promised?" The Court of Owls did not promise claws. Lincoln March walked out of the darkness, his face covered by a silver-white mask. "Although I brought them." Lincoln March looked at the Arkhams lying on the ground with disdain. "Jonathan Crane, you have failed the expectations of the Court of Owls." "Stop talking nonsense," Scarecrow said. He looked at Mr. Freeze, who was wailing on the ground. "This doesn't look like something that Penguin can make. Instead, it looks a bit like. He looked at Penguin. "Oswald, who are you working for?" In fact, Jonathan Klein had guessed the answer, but he didn't want to believe it because it didn't fit the behavior of the man he was familiar with. He paid too much attention to Bane. "Klein, we trust you, so we came to your meeting, but you invited a traitor in with a sedan chair. You have to think of a way." He heard Dr. Pig-Faced shouting, "My 100 twins seem to be attacked by someone outside. They didn't listen to my call." Harley Quinn jumped high and attacked the Scarecrow first. The Scarecrow used the same trick again, spraying a large cloud of mist on her face, but the woman who was laughing crazily was not affected at all, and hit the table next to the Scarecrow, who dodged with a stick. "This is why I hate clowns. You white-skinned lunatics are completely against pharmacology. Watch out, Harley, we have to catch him alive," Poison Ivy shouted. She carefully conjured a vine and rolled it towards Scarecrow, trying to be as gentle as possible. "This is really an unexpected situation." Scarecrow rolled back nimbly. "It's a pity that what I originally prepared should not be able to deal with such a situation." "What do you mean?" The Penguin, who was standing next to him leisurely, frowned slightly. "What did you prepare?" Chen Dao sat in the co-pilot seat on the invisible bat plane. "Batcomputer, help me connect to Robin." No response. "Hey Batcomputer, help me connect to Robin." Connected. Batman calling Robin. The plane remained hovering, and the butler Alfred sat in the driver's seat with a candle head mask next to him. Soon, Tim Drake's face appeared on the screen in front of him. He put his legs on the table, then picked up a drink, drank it angrily, made a snorting sound, and then turned his head and took a bite of Alfred's secret sandwich. Tim, there is nothing unusual in the water reservoir, Assembly Square, Night Market and other places where people gather, right? Has the firewall of Gotham TV's communication network been established? Has it not been attacked by hackers? There is nothing unusual in the TV station's interview car surveillance, right? Remember, if someone robs these cars, immediately cut off their connection with. No, old man. Tim drank the drink in his hand unhappily, and threw the empty plastic cup behind him. Batman, none of the situations you expected happened. I think you just want to find some excuses to throw me in the Batcave and don't want to take me to participate in the operation. Chen Dao felt a little guilty. It is undeniable that he did have some such thoughts, but in fact, it was more out of vigilance against the Scarecrow. At any time, we should beware of the three old things of Gotham people: poisoning Gotham reservoirs, giving terrorist speeches to Gotham citizens from TV stations, and releasing fear gas in crowded squares. Gotham people are very good at doing this kind of thing. Although it is old-fashioned, it is extremely destructive. Chen Dao knows that the Joker is a complete lunatic, but this does not mean that other criminals in Arkham are normal. For lunatics, there is no such thing as, this one is a little crazy, and that one is not so crazy. Lunatics are lunatics. Chen Dao has read War of Jokes and Riddles. The more he knows about comics, the clearer Chen Dao knows that he should not take any lunatic lightly. So he said, I'm sorry to leave you in the Batcave, Tim, I apologize to you. I admit that I did it on purpose. Batman's sudden straight ball made Robin a little embarrassed. He immediately put his feet off the table and stuttered when he spoke. No, it's okay, Batman, I don't blame you. Chen Dao smiled. He understood too well what the rebellious young righteous kid was thinking. Maybe Batman didn't understand kids very well, but Chen Dao did. But this is just out of concern for you, and it is indeed necessary to guard against the possible actions of Scarecrow. Chen Dao deliberately emphasized, your work is not meaningless, but an extremely important backup countermeasure plan. You know, Chen Dao said, generally speaking, what Scarecrow does is to manipulate fear. Therefore, whether it is poisoning the sewer or gathering many Arkham criminals, these are not the essence of his behavior. I never underestimate my enemies. Scarecrow is a madman like the Joker. He does not have a clear purpose like the traditional criminals. Chen Dao added, for example, Bane, if Bane wants to poison the city or do something, then there must be a purpose, such as controlling the city, or killing someone, or exhausting me, just like his previous Arkham Asylum riot plan. Quote. But Scarecrow is different. Scarecrow just enjoys the act of inflicting fear on others. Therefore, the result of the matter is not Scarecrow's purpose. Intimidating others is Scarecrow's purpose. Everything he does is to better intimidate others. He is not a real criminal and cannot be deduced with conventional thinking. Therefore, based on my understanding of Klein, once his plan goes wrong, Scarecrow can do anything, including but not limited to cooperating with others, or even being inferior to others. Chen Dao's eyes were dim. Yes, this is the biggest difference between Scarecrow and Joker. Although Joker will also form an alliance with others, the end of this alliance is generally, how can a real man be depressed and live under others for a long time, and then the internal explosion, a mess. Luthor must have a lot to say about this. Chen Dao continued to say to Robin. But Scarecrow is different. Whether it is ruling the city or gaining money and power, it is meaningless to him. He just wants to scare others. It's good to scare ordinary people. It's better to scare the whole city through Gotham radio, scare others with bombs, scare others with words, scare in the dark, scare in the daytime. As long as he scares others, he will climax. He just wants that shiver. As for what will happen after the shiver, he doesn't care. So this is why I insist on dealing with Scarecrow first. Chen Dao concluded. The Scarecrow is a villain with a tendency to slide down his knees. He is also suspected of stealing the nuclear bomb. If he really stole it, he might not mind cooperating with others or even surrendering in exchange for better protection of the nuclear bomb, and let him scare others happily every day. After all, he just wants to scare people. If the nuclear bomb explodes, he won't be scared. But if Batman knocks on the door and takes the nuclear bomb away, he will be even less scared. Then, Finding allies to protect the nuclear bomb together is the most likely thing he will do. Chen Dao has many enemies, such as Bane and the Court of Owls behind Lincoln March, so the best option is to knock down the Scarecrow before he gets involved with them. Chen Dao wanted to continue, but Alfred spoke. I'm very sorry to interrupt, sir, but I'm afraid Professor Klein has already done so. Alfred transferred the picture seen by the Penguin's glasses on the screen. It was a remote camera disguised as a monocle, a black technology created by Lucius. Not only that, I'm afraid Klein's actions are beyond our imagination. Alfred said slowly. Creative ideas, we often forget that Scarecrow is not only a master of manipulating fear, but also a genius in pharmacy. If Klein's self-claim is true, these things in front of him are indeed his creations, then he may have cooperated with others a long time ago. Chen Dao also saw what happened on the screen, and his face suddenly became gloomy. Sure enough, no Gotham villain should be underestimated. On the screen, two claws walked out from Lincoln Mach's side. They pulled out the knives behind them, and then, in Lincoln Mach's stunned eyes, the swollen muscles burst the uniforms of the two claws. They tightened the masks on their faces and roared to the sky. Master, have you made a plan for this situation? Yes. What is it, Master? Me. See, what's going on? You didn't tell me beforehand that you had reached a cooperation with Scarecrow Jonathan Crane. Two muscle claws roared and fought with the traitors under Penguin. Lincoln March raised his armor, and the lit 3D screen showed a man wearing a white owl mask. Lincoln March looked confused on the surface, trying not to let his voice show anger. You have obviously already negotiated with him, why did you arrange for me to pretend to inspect him? In just a few seconds, Lincoln Mach's mind had turned 18 corners. Rage rushed to his head, making his mind clear. If I'm not mistaken, without the Penguin's betrayal, I'm afraid I would have a good chat with Scarecrow, because in terms of power and strength, Scarecrow meets the standards of a collaborator you gave me before. The Owl Court's internal test plan was quickly and completely deduced in his mind. Then after the host and the guest are happy, Scarecrow will take the opportunity to say that he is very interested in me and wants to establish a private alliance with me to bypass the court. Lincoln March continued to add in his heart. Then I will refuse, and then the court will create other things to reduce my vigilance against Scarecrow. When I completely believe that I am the first member of the court to contact Scarecrow, I am afraid I will really reach some cooperation with Scarecrow behind the court's back. And if Scarecrow tells the court all these things, then it will be my doomsday. His heart was cold, and he suppressed his anger and murderous intent, without showing any in his tone and face. Yes, face. Although he was wearing a helmet, he was not sure whether the court had installed a monitor on his helmet, nor was he sure whether the expression on his face was being monitored by the court at the moment. He was not sure about anything, and therefore, he did not dare to relax for a moment. Sooner or later, I will kill you all. He was ruthless in his heart, but the melancholy face of Bruce Wayne suddenly appeared in his mind. I have a younger brother, his name is Thomas Wayne Jr., ha 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 ha, my parents and I love him very much, but he is born with a bad health. My parents entrusted him to the Willow Grove Hospital, but one day he disappeared, and I have been looking for him. If you become the mayor of Gotham, can you help me find my brother? Please forgive my presumptuous request, I know that the mayor should not use his power to do things for me personally. I have always missed my brother. He is my relative. Family. It is difficult to find him, he can no longer be called Thomas Wayne Jr. But he may be called Lincoln March. I don't understand, the court. Lincoln March's face showed a clear confused expression. As the most loyal claw of the court, I should not question the court's decision. But I don't understand why the court wants me to perform such a meaningless task. Silence. The white owl masked man opposite did not speak. Lincoln March tried his best to control his heart rate so that there would not be any changes. Although he had been strengthened by Electrum, his heart was still beating. He secretly carried out special intensive training for polygraph without the court's knowledge. With a little training, he could deceive that stupid machine. He was confident that even if he was pressed on the polygraph now, the court would not find that he was not sincere. It's not meaningless, Lincoln. The man in the white owl mask said, "It's just to test the scarecrow, don't worry about it." He said, "Now, you just need to help the scarecrow get rid of the penguin." Copper Pat, that stupid guy. When Falcone left, we spared his life. But he shouldn't interfere with the court's plan. The thing he regrets most before his death will be his erratic personality in this life. It's venom, Oswald. The scarecrow stood up from the ground, stretching his tall and thin body like a bamboo pole. He helped me realize that replenishing my own strength is not to admit my insignificance. Bang 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 bang. Without saying a word, the death shooter started to pour bullets at him. If there was still the idea of capturing the other party alive and intact before, there is no need to hold back now. All kinds of bullets poured towards the scarecrow's limbs. The 4 guns in his hands fired at the same time. The metal storm would tear the scarecrow's limbs apart in the next second, turning him into a real human pig. Even if it caused the other party to be disabled for life or had the possibility of bleeding to death, it didn't matter. He had to do it before the 2 claws came to protect him. Clang 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 clang. The sound of fine knife flashes was endless, and the sound of bullets and blades colliding was as beautiful as a sonata played by a musician. Bullets slowly fell to the ground, and the death shooter stopped shooting. His face was indifferent. Ordinary shooting like this can't do anything to the opponent. The scarecrow tightened his collar and wiped his head. In fact, knowing your own limitations is a kind of power. He said, "And I have long realized that the best way to intimidate others is unknown cards and new powers." He slowly opened his hands, and Lincoln March just watched the 7 claws he brought walk past him one by one, treating him as if he didn't exist. At this moment, Jonathan Crane was more like the spokesperson of the Court of Owls than him. "Hey, no way." Harley Quinn stood next to another muscle claw and shouted loudly, "No way, no way, they are not all muscle monsters. It can't be so outrageous." In response to her, the muscle claw next to her slashed at the place where she just stood. The samurai sword, which was originally as long as the arm, was held in the hand of the muscle claw, just like a 1.8-meter tall strong man holding a small table knife. But even so, under the huge force, the floor where Harley was originally standing immediately exploded. "Harley, don't stand so close to this monster." Poison Ivy immediately commanded the huge plant to roll back and hit Claw flying backwards. "Harley, you are a weak and helpless cute little girl, and I am a witch. You should have left these dangerous guys to me. I am also a witch," Harley Quinn said. She jumped onto Claw, who was lying on the ground, and hit him hard on the head with a baseball bat. "Die." With a bang, Harley felt that she used so much force that her hand hurt. This force was enough to smash an ordinary person's head like a watermelon. But the next second, she saw Claw straighten his head without any damage, and tore the vines wrapped around his body with his backhand. Oh! With a bang, in the rising smoke, Harley turned gymnastic somersaults and escaped beautifully and cutely. "Come on, be angry, Claws." Scarecrow raised his hands. "Use your venom." The next second, all the claws roared deafeningly. As the 7 shadows gradually grew taller and bigger, Penguin swallowed his saliva. He immediately and decisively put his hands on the headphones. "Batman! Help!" With a loud bang, the Cheshire Cat fled the place where she had just stood in a panic, and the next second, the place exploded under the joint attack of the 3 claws. The wooden floor was smashed, and wood chips flew everywhere. "What a hell," she said to the Deadshot. "I thought I didn't have to jump around like a monkey this time." She complained. "Since I came to Gotham, it seems that I have been doing the same job. I am an assassin. I'm really fed up." There were too many claws, and in such an indoor space, the Cheshire Cat couldn't make a big turn. She barely used her knife to block the samurai sword swung by the muscle claws, and then her folding knife flew out of the window with a cheering cry of, "I'm free." The Cheshire Cat was immediately a little exasperated. "Floyd, why can't you take out the ultrasonic rocket launcher or the surge effect gun and blow these guys away directly?" Of course, the Cheshire Cat was just talking. This hall might be a very spacious place for a banquet, but if it were a battlefield, a direct ultrasonic rocket here would undoubtedly be a scene of mutual destruction. The Cheshire Cat was annoyed that she was distracted during the battle. She did a swift backflip, and then saw the man on the opposite side who was trying to grab her abandon his knife and change his fists, hammering down at her with a whistling sound. The Cheshire Cat cursed in a pleasant voice. Bang! She was hit and flew backwards with her arms crossed, leaving a human-shaped hole on the wall, and fell from the second floor of the hospital. This scene was inexplicably familiar, and she seemed to have been hit and flew out in the same way when she fought with Bane before. Cold sweat broke out on the forehead of the Death Shooter. In such a small indoor space, if he used a breaching effect gun, it is very likely that this place would collapse directly. Wait, why not? Deadshot's brain froze for a moment, then he reacted immediately and turned around to call out to Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy and Killer Croc, who were still fighting with several claws. Tear this place down. Fight these freaks in an open space. He shouted loudly, and then took the lead to shoot at the load-bearing wall. Mr. Freeze, who was lying on the ground, was furious. No. What are you doing? We are still lying here and can't move. If you knock this place down, I don't care about you. Deadshot fired another shot at the wall. The current hit the wall and corroded a big charred hole on it. We must face death calmly. Ah. Great God, Almighty Father, the true God, we. Mr. Freeze turned around and saw that the lower half of the clayface was almost melted, but he was still performing there. He couldn't blame him. After all, he was a terminally ill histrionic personality. But he was still angry. Firefly, come and help me. He hurriedly called out to Firefly, the only one who could still move among the many villains. After all, it was just that his armor and uniform were scrapped, but he could still move. Mr. Freeze looked at Dr. Phosphorus, who was lying on the ground and smoking because he mistakenly took sodium hydroxide as sugar cubes, and Man-Bat, who had turned into a thin scholar. We have to get them out. Batman, if you don't come to save people, we will. I have jumped out of the plane and will arrive at the battlefield in 30 seconds. There was a whirring sound in Penguin's ears, as if someone was falling. He huddled up with the ventriloquist, and the two short and fat dwarfs trembled in the chaotic battlefield. Hurry up, I won't let you succeed. Scarecrow immediately noticed the actions of Deathstroke, and he saw Poison Ivy also followed and smashed the huge plant against the load-bearing wall next to him. He immediately called a Claw. Stop him. Yes. Even though they had become muscular freaks, these well-trained claw assassins did not slow down at all. In an instant, he appeared in front of the Death Shooter, and he swung the knife. Floyd Lawton, the Court of Owls sentences you to death. The knife fell like a stream of light, and the Death Shooter retreated violently, raising the muzzle of the gun. Clang! The samurai sword was bitten in the air by a bloody mouth, and it was immediately shattered with just a little force. It was Killer Croc. The muscular claw assassin was stunned for a moment, then swung a punch, but was caught by Killer Croc. Don't tease me. He swung his tail, and under the green scales, the muscles twisted like a centipede. Lifting his foot, stepping down, and then suddenly inserting into the floor. The opponent only felt weightlessness, spinning, and then being violently inserted into the floor like a hammer. Squeak! The head of the claw assassin broke through the floor and appeared on the ceiling of the second floor. Killer Croc showed a contemptuous look. Your strength is far inferior to that of the real Bane. He said confidently. If it's just this level, I won't lose even if there are 3 of them. The next second, he was pinned down by 5 claws that jumped up. Not fair. Woo! The fists came down like drums, and the big crocodile held his head with both hands and was kicked in a circle, unable to say a word. Taking this opportunity, Death Shooter fired another shot at the wall. Boom 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 boom. Accompanied by a thunderous sound, it seemed as if the whole world was collapsing, and the entire floor finally collapsed directly. In the ruins, Death Shooter just got up and saw that he was standing opposite them in the bright moonlight. Warren, how are you? Killer Croc pushed away a pile of rubble and stood up dizzy. He cursed and spit out a pile of rotten stones that he had eaten. I'm fine. Where's Oswald? Thanks to you, he's still alive. The voice of the penguin sounded nearby, and a pile of rubble was pushed away, revealing the penguin holding an umbrella to protect himself and the ventriloquist. He whispered, hold on for a while, Batman should have 15 seconds left. Waylon, old friend. The Scarecrow's voice rang out, and he slowly walked out from under the protection of his muscle claws and slowly clapped his hands. Still so agile after so many years, it reminds me of the golden years when we worked together before. He said, how about this, Waylon, I offer you 5 million, no, 10 million US dollars, how about you bring me the head of the stupid penguin next to you? Pay now, just like the times we worked together before. You always want money, right, big guy? Indeed, Killer Croc said, but. He paused, and said to Scarecrow's confused eyes, there are still 5 seconds now. What do you mean? 5, he said. 4. Poison Ivy flipped the bricks and stones, and the plant carried her and Harley Quinn and landed next to Penguin. 3. The Cheshire Cat, who had just been knocked away, slowly walked back. She crossed the ruins and landed next to everyone. 2. Death Shooter put down his gun and looked relaxed. 1. Penguin said, he's coming. Chen Dao fell in the center of the battlefield. Boom. This is the sound of the figure falling to the ground. A large piece of broken bricks and tiles exploded because of his undecelerated fall, splashing all around. Boom. This is the sound of the Scarecrow's heart beating. An inexplicable fear rose from his body, like the panic palpitations when he woke up in the middle of the night, and like the unexpected facts grinning in front of him. It's you, he said. The moonlight was bright. Batman stretched out his hand, and the silvery white moonlight was actually held in the center of his palm. He grabbed the silvery white light and waved it, and then half of his body disintegrated into pure darkness. This is impossible, Scarecrow roared. Go, Claws. Catch him. Still can't synchronize to Batman at the same time. Chen Dao looked at his arm that had decayed into silver light and then recovered into a broken bat. It failed to turn into the huge green claw of the Bat Dragon as he expected. A burst of severe pain came, as if protesting against his forced transformation just now. Tisk, anyway, the broken bat is enough to deal with them. Chen Dao gently turned his body to the side, allowing the claws, fists and blades to pierce his floating body. It's okay, as long as the torso and brain are not injured, it will be fine. Nano Batman is almost immune to this kind of physical attack. He thought silently, then raised his hand. Try this first. The floating tiny nanorobot flew and attacked the claws. The muscular claw assassin subconsciously raised his arms, but nothing happened. Nanobats should be able to absorb all the biological genetic files they come into contact with. Chen Dao thought silently. In theory, they should all be eroded by nanorobots and dissolved like tofu. He looked at the other party who was unharmed, but this is not the case, is it, Amber Gold? I'm afraid so. Something is preventing their cells from being taken away by nanorobots. Amber Gold has merged with their cells, and the nanorobots are like ants gnawing on a piece of hard metal. It's really troublesome. But this doesn't mean I'm helpless. Chen Dao grinned slightly, and being stared at by his pair of dark yellow cold eyes, even the sharp claw assassin who had been a corpse for hundreds of years felt a little cold. If you can't simply and crudely destroy the other party directly at the cellular level, then just use physics. The black sand in the air slowly gathered into a blade, like a fluttering flag suddenly turned into a soft ribbon, and then squeak, crunch, squeak, squeak, squeak. A teeth-grinding sound rang out from the head of the sharp claw assassin. The assassin struggled to attack that part of Chen Dao's body, using fists, blades, and even some fighting skills that could blow up the air. But none of them worked. These things hit the fluttering black ribbon and broke it, but they were all repaired in an instant and continued to increase their strength. Squeak, squeak, squeak. First, the mask on the scalp was separated. The terrifying, expressionless owl mask, Batman showed everyone that as long as the mask was cut in half, there would be nothing more than an ordinary person with gray hair and a terrified face under the mask. Weak as a baby. No, 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 let me go. The Court of Owls. The Court of Owls will. Other sharp claws pounced on them, and they tried to save their companions in a panic. They grabbed the death floating in the air with their hands, as if trying to grab a breeze, a flowing spring, a dying howl. The black gauze slipped through the gaps between their fingertips and the flow of the blade without stopping. Attack Batman, he. Chen Dao soared into the air, 10 meters, just a short distance of 10 meters. The black sand floating in the air condensed into his cloak, more like the wings of death spread out behind him. All the jumps could not touch him. Even if they barely jumped to a high enough height to get close, they would be slapped to the ground by the huge palms condensed by the nanorobots flowing in the air, like agile humans slapping crickets that kept jumping up from the ground with interest. What's going on? Attack him quickly, aren't you the Court of Owls? How can you not beat him? Batman, how can he? The Scarecrow said, this is not the Batman I know. Then, the scalp began to crack. The originally withered, dark golden hair began to leave his skull inch by inch. The skin was peeled off, revealing the dark red muscle tissue underneath. Then as more cracks appeared, it gradually turned light red. That was the result of the combined effects of amber gold and titan venom. The blood in these corpses had been diluted by all kinds of miscellaneous things, to an outrageous degree. Scarecrow is a true master of potions. He actually balanced two different things so perfectly in the same body in such a short time. The strong muscles brought by titan venom and the self-healing ability brought by amber gold work perfectly together, allowing the claw assassins to quickly heal themselves in a short period of time, and let the body actively tear the muscles to create stronger tissues. But this super strong self-healing ability is just torture at this moment. The muscles that tried to stubbornly put themselves back together fought against the black nanorobots. The severe pain stimulated the brain that had been frozen in the coffin for hundreds of years, causing him to let out hysterical, inhuman howls. Ah! The white milk filling in the sandwich biscuits was exposed, mixed with some red strawberry filling, sweet and delicious, mixed together, exuding an impressive aroma. Ah! Poison ivy made a vomiting expression. Chen Dao realized that his cruel actions were somewhat unlike himself. He frowned and quickly waved his hands. As the sound of teeth aching sounded again, this time, there was no slow torture. The biscuit was immediately broken into two halves. Bang! The body fell to the ground. It also seemed to hit the heart of the Scarecrow. He turned around suddenly and grabbed Lincoln Macha's collar. Why? Why are your claws clearly injected with titan venom and you can still be defeated so easily? I have clearly done what you asked. He shouted. Think of a way. The court must have a way. Lincoln March looked at the ugly opponent with disgust. Scarecrow is like this, obviously worshipping fear so much, but so cowardly, he is just a slave of fear. This is why he is destined to never be a dangerous person on the front line. I don't know either, Lincoln March said. You have already negotiated with the court behind my back, remember? He no longer paid attention to the other party, but said to the image projected on the communication that had been opened on the armor, so, do you have any preparations? The court member on the image turned sideways and said to the Scarecrow with disdain, useless things. Then he said, of course we have. The man with the white owl mask said slowly, the owl court knows everything, and can do everything. What about our backup plan? He will be here soon. Then, the Scarecrow heard the sound of someone slowly clapping. It's wonderful, Scarecrow, I know you. I didn't expect the court to give you my venom sample for research, and you actually successfully developed the project of combining venom and amber finance in a short time. Incredible. Recommend a friend's book. The Girl Next Door Turns into a Cat. Introduction. I don't know when it started, Suzuki Mamoru discovered that he had an ability. Observe, describe, copy. Observe each other, inseparable, describe characteristics, outline the shape, and then, copy. After observing the girl next door for nearly a month, Suzuki Mamoru obtained her ability, the ability to turn into a cat. So, meow, meow, two cats that clearly host human souls met like this. It's foggy. Under the vast moonlight, a soft veil floated on the fluorescent ground. Batman, riding the black mist, hovered in the air, surrounded by deep darkness. Bane looked up and saw the moonlight at that moment, passing through the majestic dark ink-colored vortex of clouds and rain, casting the figure of that person onto the ground. He had dreamed of such a beautiful scene countless times. So breathtaking, shocking, and wonderful. It's Bane. Court, you told me that you were going to cooperate with me and rule this city together. I am your ally. When did you betray me and Bane? Don't you know that Bane and I are competitors? Bane, who was originally immersed in Batman, looked at the other party with disgust. Shut up, Klein, or I'll kill you. This threat was so real that Scarecrow shut his mouth immediately. Rustle, countless subtle sounds rang out, like the sound of the hem of a piece of clothing rubbing against the wall. This sound should have been so quiet that no one could hear it. This sound should have been heard only on the crowded streets. But at this moment, everyone on the scene heard this subtle sound. Rustle, Rustle, are you kidding me? Said Penguin. He took off his monocle, his voice trembling. Does this make sense? Death Shooter tried to smile, but his stiff and twitching facial muscles prevented him from even doing this simple action. He murmured to himself in a low voice, Zoe is still waiting for me to come back. I feel like my butt hurts. Poison Ivy replied. She rolled up a bunch of plants and protected herself tightly in it, then snapped her fingers, and the wooden baseball bat in the hand of Harley Quinn, who was still looking around in the distance, immediately grew and turned into a wooden snake. It forcibly tied her up like a dumpling while she screamed in confusion, and then carried her to the side of Poison Ivy, wrapped in 3 layers of plants. Killer Croc silently hugged his head. Sharp claws emerged from the surrounding roofs. They emerged like a tide, occupying all the roofs of the surrounding houses. They were tall and thin, and the only thing in common was that they were fully armed. Then the next second, they jumped down from the building one by one. Click, click, paw. The sound of flesh falling on the hard concrete floor was endless, as if playing a symphony with a rhythmic sense. The claws who jumped from the tall building had broken spines, twisted limbs, and even their heads hit their vests. But they stood up from the ground as if nothing had happened. The twisted spines were straightened, and the twisted and broken limbs glued the band-aids together. Everyone watched them stand up from the ground, who should have been fatally injured. Wait, let's calm down first, Killer Croc said. As the most intelligent person here, I seem to have thought of a very weird question, but I don't know if I should say it. The big green crocodile swallowed his saliva. Deadshot said, if Scarecrow has solved the problem of Bane Venom and the Amber Finance combination for that weird organization called the Court of Owls, then it means. That's right. The man with the white owl mask projected on Lincoln Mach's armor said, all of them can use Amber Gold and Titan Venom at the same time, perfect weapons. Oh, right, Batman, you probably don't know who we're yet, right? But you won't have such troubles soon. Chen Dao had a blank expression on his face. To be honest, this was not originally the place where we expected to fight the final battle. The series of things you did have greatly disrupted our plans and rhythm of action. But it doesn't matter, it's the same if it's earlier or later. You know, bats will die one day. Lincoln March raised his arm and flipped the direction of the 3D projection image, completely revealing the man with the white owl mask in front of Chen Dao. He had a complicated expression. He was angry that the court completely treated him as an outsider and was wary of him everywhere, but he deeply admired and feared the powerful power held by the court. That mysterious organization that controls the entire city and is powerful in politics, economy, humanities, physical destruction ability, and hiding ability. How can it not be terrifying? They have been firmly in control of the entire city behind the scenes for more than 2 centuries. Roman, Falcone, Big Boss, Maloney, those who once claimed to have conquered the city, were just their lackeys and lackeys. The Thomas couple once rebelled against them, so they created Crime Alley. Batman has been doing justice in Gotham City for so many years. The greatest detective in the world, huh? But he still doesn't know about their existence. Maybe he has some guesses, but he has never got any evidence, right? He fights criminals every year, but in the eyes of the Court of Owls, he is just their guard dog, acting as a police dog to clamp down on those lunatics on their behalf. How sad. Oh, and poor Bruce Wayne. Lincoln and March know that he tries every year to change the city by changing politics and economy, but every time he succeeds, he fails. This is something that will happen. Destruction is always 100 times easier than construction, and it is also more obscure. Bruce always finds himself inexplicably failed, right? Those plans that were originally good on paper, charitable measures, plans to drive regional economic development, and reduce unemployment, will always be a mess when they are actually implemented. No matter how much money the Wayne Group allocates, it will not go to the people who really need it in the end, but all flow into the pockets of the owls. That's right, Lincoln thought sadly. Owls are creatures that are so good at occupying other people's nests. They occupied the giant nest called Gotham, and for 200 years, generation after generation, they continued to absorb the blood of this city. The Court of Owls knows everything, and no one can win the Court of Owls. And after getting your body, Batman, we will give you the respect you deserve. The court decided to keep your bones underground and keep them in the maze for permanent display. A monument to a brave opponent. In history, the court has only given such an honor 3 times. Accepting such an honor, do you have anything to say before you die? You are just a crazy organization. The other party tutted. It seems that you don't have a dying speech. Then the next step is to decide how you die. For this, we have also invited a special guest who has just joined the court. The White Owl masked man clapped his hands. Then Lincoln heard a heart-chilling laugh. Ha ha, ha ha, ha ha ha. Little bat, we meet again. Chapter 71. For the first time, a look of horror appeared on Chen Dao's face. He saw the pale man who came out of the claws. Exactly the same. This is impossible, he said firmly. Are you surprised to see me? Cute little bat. Chen Dao stared into the eyes of the Joker. He told himself that he was just a human, the Joker in the comics, Chen Dao has the memory of the broken bat. Before his spine was broken by Bane and he was defeated by the Angel of Death, the life trajectory of the broken bat Bruce Wayne was almost exactly the same as the Batman in the main universe, so he had studied people's eyes like the real Batman. Thanks to him, ordinary people like Chen Dao who have never studied criminal psychology will also know that there are 6 types of eye movements that reveal people's motives, and each type has 15 variants. No matter who they are facing, even the most hardened criminals, their pupils will shrink or expand according to their emotions. Happiness, joy, love, pupils dilate. Fear, anger, hatred, pupil constriction. But the man in front of him is different. His pupils are constant, always dark dots. The owner of those eyes hates everything in the world. No light can shine into these eyes. He stares straight at you through the darkness. Each pupil is a tiny black pearl fixed in space, a bullet attacking you. These eyes say that he is not an ordinary person. But Chen Dao knows him. He is just a human who fell into a barrel of chemical waste. And he has killed the clown. But the person here is standing in front of him. Is he a copycat, or did he kill the wrong person from the beginning? The clown walked out with a smile, and his appearance made the moonlight become half a bit colder. He laughed exaggeratedly and bowed like a court jester, which was more like dancing than walking. Ah, great court. I am so honored to come and watch this great comedy. Masterpiece. The Fall of the Night. He stared at Chen Dao with malicious green eyes. Superhero, the death of Batman. Poison Ivy felt suffocated. She waved her arms, and all kinds of plants tied Harley Quinn into 3 layers inside and outside, and turned her into a silkworm. She had to prevent Harley from seeing the Joker again. I can't believe I would say this, but I still have to say that Batman might not win this time. Poison Ivy found that Penguin quietly rubbed against her side. I admit that Batman has a lot of magical little abilities that we didn't know before, but you can see that his black sand can't do anything to that muscle freak. Penguin wiped the sweat off his face. I know Batman is very powerful, but we have to use normal logic. Unless Batman has some unknown backup, it would take so much time and effort to kill one of them and cut open his head just like he did just now. Here there are at least dozens of people. Can we defeat them all with just him and us? Quote. He said to Poison Ivy very quickly, Batman has been tricked. Don't you know, we have done this before, hiding information that Batman doesn't know, and then attacking suddenly. He said, sometimes Batman can break through our arrangement with brute force, but sometimes he will also leave in a mess. I know that the same arrangement will not work for Batman for the second time, and I know that Batman will be unstoppable when he comes back, but I think if Batman fails here once, we may not be able to hold on until his next comeback. He whispered. This time he sold Klein directly, and sold him on the spot in front of the victim, which is equivalent to making a big grudge with Scarecrow. With Scarecrow's licking of the Court of Owls, who knows what he will do to him? Ivy, I'll give you money. When the fight starts, you just take the plants, roll up me and Harley and run away. The Penguin wiped the sweat off his head, and the fat on his chin trembled as he spoke quickly. Even if Batman loses, he can always run away. It will be miserable if we are left behind. Ivy, you have to make plans early. Chen Dao heard the Penguin's escape plan, but he didn't comment. The Penguin didn't think he could hide it from Chen Dao on such a large battlefield. He knew that Batman would not kill him just because of this. So he immediately showed the nature of the Arkham Man without hesitation and without concealment. Chen Dao ignored him. He just stared at the Joker coldly, and the other laughed and fell down. Did you see it? Bat, ha ha ha, ha ha ha, ha ha ha. Obviously, he heard what Poison Ivy and Copper Pat had just said. There was a vicious light flashing in those eyes, that deep, pure malice. So that's enough pleasantries, Batman. The White Owl masked man on Lincoln Macha's armor said, Joker, we have met your conditions and have allowed you to see your Batman and talk to him for a while. But now, you know. It's noon. Batman. The Court of Owls sentences you to death. Wait. The White Owl masked man raised his hand and was about to wave it down, but was stopped by Chen Dao's shout. Oh, do you have any last words? Chen Dao sighed in a low voice. I'm really annoyed by owls. The black sand slowly wrapped around Chen Dao and fell to the ground. What no one noticed was that next to the body of Owl Claw, whose skull was torn open by Chen Dao, a wisp of black nanorobots were moving in. Chen Dao said to Bane, Bane, you owe me a favor, now is the time to pay it back. The Joker looked around as Chen Dao and Bane talked, and took out a small handkerchief from a pocket on his chest and bit it in his mouth. Do you believe I will return it? Bane spoke. From the beginning till now, except for the first sentence, he has been quiet and silent like a solemn Eiffel Tower, just like a foil to the Court of Owls and the Joker. Why don't you think I'm deceiving you with words? Bane, do you still owe Batman a favor? The man in the White Owl mask said, you didn't mention this at all when you were discussing cooperation with us. What exactly happened? Common things, Bane said, Batman saved my life. Then this is indeed quite common. The man in the White Owl mask said, Batman has saved a lot of people, and we are almost used to it. Bane, it's time to repay me. Chen Dao continued to emphasize, if you can repay me now, it will just solve my problem. What are you thinking about? Bane said, I warned you at the time that you saved a venomous snake and we are always enemies. Do you really think I will betray my allies for you? He said, obviously. The next second, he whistled with both hands and grabbed the neck of the claw beside him. I will. The previous chapters were blocked, so I could only copy the words, then edited and reposted them. I was so afraid of duplicate chapters. I will contact the editor tomorrow to delete the blocked chapters. And recommend a friend's book. Infinite Delusion starting from Leo. The engine was roaring, and the jeep raised a sandstorm. Zhu Xingtuan swung his crutches and pointed at the two people in front. Don't run, rush towards the car. Feng Yuan said in horror. I don't understand this, Captain. Li Shu collapsed and said, but what does this have to do with me, Captain, are you awake? Ah, Saralang. This. Bane, what are you doing? Bane's sudden betrayal made the White Owl masked man stunned for half a second. All the claws left his side in an instant and surrounded him. The sudden changes made Penguin and others dizzy. Killer Croc sat cross-legged on the ground, like a primary school student waiting for the movie to start. How dare you? Bane threw the body on the ground indifferently. You know, as I said, I owe Batman a favor. This ridiculous reason made the other party laugh out loud. Shit, he cursed. The White Owl masked man said, do you think I will believe this kind of trick for children? Have you ever thought about the consequences of betraying the Court of Owls? Lincoln March slowly retreated. The other party is now hiding behind the network cable and talking nonsense, while he is going to hit Bane's fist directly. Lincoln March knew that the other party had never considered his own safety at all. You deserve to die. What a shame, it surprises me, Bane. You chose to turn against us when you least expected to betray us. The bodies of the more than 20 claws at the scene began to swell slowly, and the sound of their uniforms being torn was particularly harsh at this time. It's so interesting. The Joker laughed beside him. Hurry up, I want to see a river of blood. Me too. Harley Quinn excitedly popped her head out of the layers of plants of poison ivy. Why do you still have so much nonsense to talk about? Isn't it better to fight until the last drop of blood in your body is drained? Then she was sealed by poison ivy with more plants in the next second. Chen Dao silently observed them. He remained calm, and the black mist quietly spread to the Arkham people lying on the ground when no one noticed. With a clang, the sound of the claws pulling out their blades was uniform. The White Owl masked man said, stupid choice, no matter what your reason is, you will soon regret what you are doing now. He said, you still have a chance to apologize now. Bane tilted his head. This action would be very cute if it was done by a 7 or 8-year-old girl, but when it was done by a muscular monster over 2 meters tall, it would only make people feel a kind of crazy beauty. And there is no doubt that this crazy temperament is very suitable for Gotham. He pretended to think for half a second. Thank you, but I refuse. Well, it seems that you have made a decision, although it is a veritable suicide choice. The owl masked man said. But before the claws cut out your heart, I still want to figure out a question. I can't figure it out. He was wearing a mask and the expression on his face could not be seen. Why, even though we have only worked together for such a short time, I know very well that you are not a chivalrous hero. Don't tell me any cold jokes about human relationships. I don't believe a word of it. He said, you are a thoroughgoing ambitious person, no different from Falcone and Maloney. The court has promised you the place you deserve in the future city. How dare you not be grateful to us? Bane did not answer. The owl-masked man shook his head and looked at the Joker. What about you, you crazy clown? You wouldn't be stupid enough to betray the court like Bane. Oh, of course not. The Joker covered his chest. Dear Owl Boss, you actually thought of me like this? He said indignantly. Everyone in the underworld knows that I, the Joker, have always been loyal to one person. He said, and everyone knows that Batman and I are mortal enemies. He walked to the side of a claw and hugged his shoulders familiarly. This time I finally joined such an excellent boss like the Court of Owls, I don't want to lose my job. Ha ha, ha ha, ha 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 ha. He said, I declare that I will part ways with Bane. After all, the Court of Owls is my best ally friend. Ah. Squeak. As soon as he finished speaking, the strong acid corsage on his chest splashed the claw assassin's face, and then the next second, the Joker's knife pierced into the other's chest. The Joker pounced on the claw assassin. Under the dual blessing of Titan Venom and Amber Gold, the opponent was like a wall standing there. The Joker laughed wildly while stabbing the dagger into the opponent's body, but he couldn't shake the opponent at all. But he just stabbed again and again, as excited and high as reproduction, as if he could absorb countless perverted and twisted pleasures from it. What a pity. The voice of the owl-masked man was calm and indifferent. It's hard to evaluate. You too, Batman too, chose to die for some boring reasons. A group of ridiculous puppets standing on the stage. You don't know who the real owner of this city is. He said slowly. For hundreds of years, the Great Court of Owls has always controlled this city. Do you know what enemy you are facing? How dare you? Oh, I dare, Bane said. Oh, I dare, Chen Dao whispered in his heart. He hurriedly used black fine sand to infiltrate the brains of the Arkham people. The nanorobots broke through their brains at the cellular level and swam to the center. The Joker stopped stabbing people. He sneered softly. Oh, God, why do you think so? Of course I dare. Then the claws surrounded the only scarecrow who did not betray. Scarecrow. The owl-masked man looked at the scarecrow. Oh no, don't get me wrong, the court. The scarecrow hurriedly got up from the ground and rubbed against the claws. I absolutely want to cooperate with the court sincerely. I am not a complete lunatic like the Joker and Bane. He emphasized loudly. I am a normal person, different from those lunatics. The owl-masked man repeatedly confirmed that the scarecrow was sincere and did not rush to attack the claws like the clown. He nodded with satisfaction. A wise choice. I'm afraid the controller of this city is already clear. Then, he snapped his fingers, and the muscle claws began to approach Bane and the others. It's time to clean the house. Bane sighed. To be honest, I plan to squeeze out the last drop of your usefulness before I start. The Joker also sighed. That's right, after all, there are not many toys as useful as you. Bane said. Allies who are jaw-dropping in terms of both funding and political power can often come up with some good things that make people unable to take their eyes off. He said. No matter who it is, seeing such an excellent ally, they will be very excited. It's really scary that a humanoid weapon that can't be killed has lived in the city for hundreds of years, the Joker said. It really makes people have an urge to worship, hee-hee. Hee-hee, hee-hee. But the most important point is, Bane said. But the unbearable point is, the Joker added. Gutter trash like you are qualified to interfere in our fight. Well, you have completely exhausted my last drop of patience with you. Even through the mask, one can feel the owl-masked man's suddenly gloomy face. Well, let me teach you one thing. Looking at the claws that gathered, Bane pinched the joints on his fist. Drops of venom flowed into his body from the bottle on his back through the pipe, making his body grow stronger and stronger little by little. You, my terrible friends. You will learn two things in person. He stretched out a finger. First, to become Bane, you need more than just my venom. He pinched the face of the claws that pounced on him with one hand, and the powerful force pressed his fingers into the opponent's skull. The muscular claws that were so arrogant just now seemed extremely weak in front of Bane. Bane grabbed the ankle of one of the claw assassins with his bare hands, swung him in a circle in the air, and slammed him on the ground, once, twice, just like swinging a plastic hammer to play whack-a-mole. You. Bang. Stop. Bang. Hand. Bang. The claw assassin was lying on the ground with his forelegs up in the air, with his bulging muscles twisted like twisted twists, curled up on his body in a disgusting and ugly way. Bane kicked him directly, and then he rolled out and lay on the ground like a piece of garbage. Well done. Killer Croc jumped up. That's the move. He pointed at Bane's 2 blows excitedly. That's how he beat me at that time. The penguin rolled his eyes. Chen Dao immediately drove the nanorobots to spread over, and the skull of the claws that was cracked by Bane provided him with convenience, and Haisha hurried to drill in. Second, if I gave you the power of venom, then why do you think you can use this power to fight me? The steel knife swung by the claw assassin broke on his tight skin, and Bane strangled the other's throat. Did you feel it? That's the feeling of the remaining hope gradually flowing out of your body and your war. Oh my God, what's going on? Lincoln March whispered in a low voice. This time he saw it clearly. The hood of the claw assassin was knocked off just now, and Lincoln March's pupils reflected the scene of the claw approaching Bane. The originally blue-gray face suddenly became rotten and smelly, and the bulging muscles withered in an instant. The owl-masked man could no longer maintain the posture of the master behind the scenes, and he stood up from his seat. What should we do, Court? Lincoln March said to the communication. What are you going to do? You are a bunch of ridiculous skeletons who should have died long ago. Let me teach you. Violating the laws of nature will be punished, and in this world, nothing is truly immortal. Soon, Bane said, when your blood betrays you, when your body betrays you. Bane threw a withered claw on the ground. Without that strong body, he let out a hysterical whine before touching the ground. The huge pain was unbearable even for the undead. He sobbed and straightened his body, like a fish stranded on the sea and about to drown. Bane's voice followed. The remaining potion will ensure that your body is tortured by severe pain, and this severe pain is an old friend I have known for a long time. However, unlike you, I have the strength and will to overcome it. The clown jumped up with a wild laugh. How about a magic trick? He rode directly on the head of a claw assassin, and swung the blade into the eyes of the claw fiercely. Dang dang. Please watch the real magic that will open your eyes and turn the world into pure black in a second. It doesn't matter. Put all the people on it. The owl-masked man immediately ordered. Let those ordinary claws hiding around who have not been transformed in time also take action. He shouted at Lincoln Maki. Take them. Take everyone. Cut out the hearts and lungs of these lunatics who dared to fool us. Lincoln Maki was in a complicated mood. The court had never suffered such a big loss, and it was obvious that the other party had regarded him as the temporary leader of the Claw Legion at this moment. This might be the moment when he was most trusted by the court, but it was under the coercion of external forces, which made Lincoln March want to laugh. He whistled. Rustle. Death Shooter shuddered. He raised his gun and stood back to back with the Cheshire Cat. Ah, I don't think it's good. Killer Croc said. More and more ordinary claws appeared from their hiding places around, and they poured into the battlefield like a tide. There were too many people, densely packed, and heads were everywhere. Poison Ivy groaned. Oh my God. The voice of the owl-masked man returned to that high and mighty stench. Well, we have to admit that maybe they do have something beyond the court's expectations. But the matter ends here. We have more people, and this is the absolute gap in combat power. His voice gradually returned to stability. Now it's 3 digits against 1 digit. Really? The owl-masked man stopped moving. He looked at Chen Dao. Click. Mr. Freeze slowly stood up from the ground. His armor gradually changed from red to sea blue in the next 2 seconds. He exhaled, and frost condensed on the ground, reflecting Victor's indifferent eyes. What's going on? The Scarecrow said. Victor. Mr. Freeze ignored him. The next to stand up was the mud-faced man. The clumps of mud finally reshaped and condensed into a body, and the huge mud monster stood there expressionlessly, like a sculpture cast in wax. The Firefly climbed up. This villain who was good at using fire stood up like a zombie, first with his left foot bent upside down, then dragged half of his body, and the black mist in the air condensed into a hand, supporting him from behind. Then the next one, the next one. One by one, the Arkham villains slowly climbed up from the ground in various inhuman postures. They stood there expressionlessly. The Scarecrow felt that his heart was caught by something invisible. What's going on? The Penguin whispered to himself, this is not scientific. His eyes stayed on these Arkham colleagues, and then turned to look at Batman. How did you control them? Just some tricks of Tech, Mad Hatter. Chen Dao answered him. He rubbed his fingers. Lucius has always been an all-round scientist. Although he couldn't figure out how the Mad Hatter, an expert in the field of nerves, made those hats that could control people's hearts in a short time, just as a shipbuilder couldn't figure out the principle of a car in a short time. But if it is just a simple borrowing and plagiarism, knowing the result but not the reason to make some control chips, there is no problem. So, in short, Chen Dao exhaled, and his body slowly decomposed into black sand, which made his lower body look like a walking spiral black hole. The criminals of Arkham slowly followed behind him, arching him in the center, like a minister following the king. The master of Gotham, the star-studded Bat King, raised a grim smile at the corner of his mouth. Are you ready to kill? Roar. The Arkham villains controlled by the chip opened their mouths and let out chaotic roars. Each of the scumbags had a dull expression on their faces. The strong, the weak, the ones with superpowers, and the ones who were just mortals, but today, at this moment, they were all controlled by the Mad Hatter's central nervous system control chip, the control of Batman. Although such simple and crude control made them not as powerful as before, and although such inhumane control weakened their wisdom, they were still the most dangerous group of people in the city. They were completely controlled by Batman, well, except for the Clayface, which seemed reasonable. After all, the Clayface itself was a pile of mud and didn't even have a brain. If such a supernatural monster could be controlled by a chip, it would be strange, right? But he still chose to mix in with those controlled Arkhams and beat up the assassins of the Court of Owls. Why was this? Chen Dao suddenly realized that the Clayface was a crazy performative personality. He just wanted to play different roles anytime and anywhere. At this moment, it was obvious that the role he wanted to play was a controlled Arkham person. Quote. Chen Dao was speechless for understanding the madman's thoughts so quickly. He seemed to always be able to quickly understand what other people were thinking in their crazy heads. No matter how crazy and unrestrained their thoughts were, they could resonate with his brain. Chen Dao felt that this might be considered a kind of talent. The Joker looked at Batman, who was guarded by the entire Arkham, with flickering eyes. I don't know what he was thinking. Chen Dao waved his hand, and Mr. Freeze stopped attacking and walked straight towards him. Victor, is Nora in good health recently? A claw waving a samurai sword pounced on the two people who were talking. Chen Dao waved a black air, and the assassin was cut into two pieces in midair like a piece of chocolate cake with wine filling. The wine and honey sauce were all over the two people. It was really disgusting. Chen Dao looked at his hands with some melancholy. When did his painting style become like this? Even though he didn't want to be a superhero forever, after he had just traveled through time and confirmed that he would have a superhero career, he had imagined being a popular superhero idol with oily hair and powdered face. When landing, he must land in a superhero style, and then as soon as he landed, there would be crazy female fans cheering desperately, shouting until they fainted from excitement on the spot, and he would grin and stick out his butt chin. But now when he raised his hand, a black air would appear, and when he flew, the black air was gloomy, and his body would condense various black blades and weapons at any time, and he had completely become a villain. Sad. Chen Dao shook his head and cut off the divergent thoughts in his mind. Victor, I don't plan to make too many small talk, I think you are already cold enough. Chen Dao said directly, I need your help. I know very well that wisdom is power for you. Believe me, Tech's puppet-like manipulation is not my intention. The regenerative compounds in the claws, blood are heat sensitive, which means that once the temperature is too low, their movements will slow down and become weaker than living people. Chen Dao said, and you are a master of regulating cold air. Only you can make the cold air affect the claws without hindering our actions. The wooden and indifferent expression faded from the face of Mr. Freeze. Victor, his eyes became lively again, and he stared at Chen Dao gloomily. He seemed to want to pounce on Batman, but his limbs were motionless and stood there straight. Why do you think I will help you, Batman? He shouted angrily. You are dreaming. I just want to shoot you with the freezing gun, and then chop your internal organs into pieces. He said, I want to wrap a rope around your soft and pathetic neck, and then tie the knot to death, watching your eyes depressed, your lips twitching, accompanied by your futile prayers. Mr. Freeze cursed viciously. I just want you to die. He paused, and then continued. The Court of Owls plagiarized my technology to save the claws. If they want to control this city, they can't avoid the development of the claw's transformation, which means they are in urgent need of my technology. He looked at the shiver hiding aside the trembling Scarecrow, sneered at the other party's ugly appearance. The reason why the court values Scarecrow is just because of his ability to win over and control us Arkham people. Obviously, Arkham people can greatly enhance the power of the court. They need us. We are valuable, aren't we? Then why don't we sell ourselves for a good price, but turn to help you? Our enemy. Mr. Freeze mocked. Yes, that's right, you are now controlling us with Tetch's little tricks, so and so. But why do you think this can threaten me? Mr. Freeze's expression was indifferent. Death does not scare me. Chen Dao knew that what the other party said was true. Mr. Freeze's heart is like bronze, and a simple and crude death threat will not make him surrender. The court will never be stingy with its promises to me, even if I don't need them. And helping you, what benefit can I get? My gratitude. Chen Dao answered him directly. I beg for your help. Mr. Freeze was choked by this completely unconventional remark, and the words he wanted to say were stuck in his trachea. He laughed angrily. That's it. Your gratitude, your plea. You are not short of money, Victor. Chen Dao said to him. You have robbed enough money to keep Nora alive. And your years of hiring money. Chen Dao said. Money can no longer buy you. Mr. Freeze shook his head. Do you think I will give up the generous conditions that the Court of Owls may offer me for these? He looked at the Arkham people, Bane, the Joker, and the Claws fighting with them around him. You don't think that the Court of Owls is finished after dealing with these Claws? He said. Scarecrow has told me how dangerous the Court of Owls is. Their conditions are 10,000 times better than yours. So, are you willing to help me, old friend? Mr. Freeze sighed. He is a mad scientist, a mercenary who does things for money. Although he only takes orders within Gotham, he is still a husband who loves his wife. But he has another identity, an identity he has had for a long time. He is Batman's villain, a longtime enemy of Batman. He said slowly. You beg me? Yes, Chen Dao said. I beg you, I need your help. Mr. Freeze sighed again, and he said irresistibly. Okay, I will help you. Chen Dao breathed a sigh of relief. He originally wanted to threaten Mr. Freeze with his wife. He had never thought of using Batman's personality charm to make Mr. Freeze work for him. If the face recognition was not successful, the words in his throat would have come out, this husband, you don't want your wife. Although this can also manipulate Victor and even make him work hard, it will undoubtedly also gain new resentment from the other party. Now it is possible to peacefully reach a cooperation intention, making the other party mistakenly believe that he still has a choice, and then make his own choice. This is really the best situation. In short, it was a massacre. As time passed, the invincible Claw assassins were defeated by the joint efforts of the entire Gotham. When Mr. Freeze, who was driving the cold wave, sprayed the last cold air on the battlefield, everything was over. The battle gradually stopped. The Claw assassins were lying on the ground, most of them were torn in half like pieces of paper, and were abandoned on the ground like a pile of broken toy dolls. Scarecrow was about to sneak away, but he turned around and bumped into Batman's chest. He heard the other party say expressionlessly. Nuclear weapons, Crane, crack. Bane twisted the neck of the last Claw he could find, and the Joker slowly walked to his side. Bane did not continue to attack, but looked at Chen Dao with a playful look. What? Chen Dao lifted the Scarecrow's neck. Don't play dumb, Klein, you know you stole the nuclear weapon from Copper Pat. Ha, nuclear weapons, what are you talking about? The Scarecrow replied. I don't know anything about this. Then he showed the same look of realization as the Riddler. Oh, I understand. So that's why you went to so much trouble to come here. Ha 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 ha. He began to laugh nervously, and the clown bit his lip. The Penguin next to him felt his head buzzing. You. He ran to the Scarecrow, also stood on tiptoe, and grabbed the outside of his shirt. Don't joke with me, Klein. Didn't you really steal my nuclear bomb? He thought of a terrible fact. There are only a few people who have the motivation and ability to steal the nuclear bomb. If the nuclear bomb was not taken away by the Scarecrow, then it means. He remembered that the arms deal with Bane was tonight. It happened to be tonight, which was a coincidence. He thought of how he had contacted Scarecrow a few days ago to hand over Mayor Carlo to him. Oh, but the other party kept delaying, and the date was set by the other party, which happened to be tonight. And Penguin's men should have started handing over the goods at about this time. If the time was so accurate, it meant. Penguin's phone rang, and he answered it with a gloomy face. There was a lot of noise on the other end of the phone, with gunshots and explosions. Penguin heard his men shouting, "Boss, they are robbing each other and don't want to pay for the weapons." Penguin felt a surge of anger from his feet to his head. He figured it out. That is, Bane not only stole his nuclear bomb, but also used the Emperor Penguin to cheat him of a bunch of things and a suggestion, and then today he got a lot of weapons and equipment for free. Plundering a sheep. Yes, I stole the nuclear bomb. Chen Dao put down the Scarecrow. Bane revealed the truth. Where should I start? He turned his head to look at Lincoln March. The White Owl masked man still stubbornly did not hang up the call, even though many bodies lying in disorder were clearly visible on his computer screen. And the White Owl masked man also looked at the other party. Foolish, Bane. You will regret today one day in the future. The other party sat in the gutter, like a king who dominated the garbage dump. But what Bane said next made him unable to maintain such an attitude. The most expensive private residential area in Gotham is worth $58 million, and the upper 3 floors belong to the famous Pavos Hotel. The patriarch of the Perros family, Joseph, and his wife Maria also live there. The White Owl masked man hiding behind the screen finally stood up. How do you know my address and identity? I have never. How dare you? It was those words that were repeated over and over again. Chen Dao's ears were calloused from listening. Bane didn't speak. He just looked at Lincoln March, and the figure projected by his armor, which made people feel cold. That was the look of looking at a dead person. Then he blew gently. Whoosh! Shameful betrayer! You will. Boom! The violent explosion and fire instantly drowned the video on the other side. Bane put his finger on the headset calmly. Caveman, have you done it? The other party's voice came from his headset. Completely dead, absolutely no problem, Bane. Bane spread his hands. Amazing, Chen Dao commented. Everything was planned by you, right, Bane? The Court of Owls provided you with Electrum for free, and perhaps also provided you with a lot of funds. And you killed their important people in return. You had planned what happened today. I guess it's not just that. You may have a list of the true identities of other court members in your hand, right? You will kill them one by one and get rid of them all. Quote. No matter how many times he has seen it, Chen Dao has to be amazed by Bane's leverage plan of getting something for nothing. Oh, Penguin is even more unlucky. Not only was he stolen by you, but he was also robbed by you. Scarecrow first worked for you for free, and then became your scapegoat to attract me to fight him to the death. And you calmly hid the nuclear bomb. At the moment when the Court of Owls and Scarecrow are finished, you can take it out at any time to threaten the entire city, even the entire country, and threaten me, so as to completely conquer Gotham. Chen Dao said, everything is going according to your plan. At this time, you must feel that most things are under your control, right? Quote. Bane was a little stiff. At that moment, he kept reviewing his plan in his mind to see if there were any omissions. He calculated everything Batman should know. What did he miss? You calculated everything I could mobilize, Bane. Even just now on the plane, you were trying to hack into the Batplane to find out what Robin and I were talking about, right? But, the more scheming a person is, the more likely he will fall into unexpected difficulties. The more complicated the plan and the more sophisticated the instrument, the more likely it is to be stuck by an unexpected pebble. Chen Dao said, it only takes one person who is unexpected to you. Crashed. Why have you never considered that you also sent your men out to steal the goods of the Black Penguin and murder the members of the court according to the list, causing the power to guard the nuclear bomb to gradually become empty? Why do you think that I will not take any action when you are executing the plan? Quote. Lincoln March silently put down his arm and walked to Chen Dao's side. Bane stared at him closely. An unexpected existence, a person without any signs. He is obviously a member of the Court of Owls. How did he get involved with Batman? Is there a possibility I let you plan these just to find the place where you store nuclear bombs at this time? Bane's phone rang. Quote. An enemy suddenly broke in, and their target is the thing you told us to protect. It can't be stolen, Bane said immediately. This thing has been taken away. Bane said angrily. With your strength, how could you not stop it? I have obviously retained a lot of manpower. It's the claws, Bane. The claws of the Court of Owls. They also used your Titan venom. They are all muscles. We can't stop them at all. So, the most important point is, Bane. Chen Dao said. This is Batman's city. Quote. He whispered, this is Batman's home turf. No one in this world can predict everything. Clouds roll and springs flow. The development of everything in this world is just like them, with unpredictable changes. One thing affects the whole body, and variables bring new variables. Even Brainiac can't calculate all the possibilities. But Batman can. Because Batman will make everyone think he can do it, and everyone will believe that he can do it. So every time, he can really do it, no matter how lucky it is. And I am Batman. But I am not Batman. I am Chen Dao, a time traveler, an imperfect mortal. I guess Bruce Wayne is the same. But Batman is always perfect. Therefore, what is important is not who the face under the mask is, but that this mask is here at this moment. Batman is here. I saw Bane yelling at the phone. His voice was lofty and distant, as if it was separated from my world by a thick film, as if it was not real, but as if it was close at hand. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and find a way to get the things back. What? Your leader was kidnapped. Who was captured? Birdman. Zombie. Cave dweller. I used an unplanned chess piece to steal his trump card that he thought no one knew, although I still don't know how he knew where the Penguin hid the nuclear bomb, and whether there was someone helping him behind the scenes, but all of this is meaningless. Bane will never have the chance to use that nuclear bomb to scare anyone again. I can hear the anger, disappointment and regret in that voice, which was what Bane intended to impose on me. But now he is reaping the fruits of his own labor. I can't imagine that I did all this. Bane is too concerned about the Court of Owls and doesn't know me well. And I happen to know him very well. Click. Bane hung up the phone. He looked at Chen Dao steadily, and the rage of the mountains and seas condensed in his body and finally settled. You're good, he said. You did a good job. A green plant sprout suddenly broke through the flesh on the other side of his body and grew out. Drops of blood oozed out of his skin, and then there was an unsettling squirming sound on that half of his body. Bane was indifferent. Wearing a hood, he couldn't tell what his expression was. This change only lasted half a second, making people wonder if he had seen it wrong just now. He slowly retreated. He had decided to escape. He knew he could escape. If he wanted to escape, no one could stop him, not even the current Batman. This was not the best time for the final battle with Batman. He was alone and defeated, while the other side had more people and more power. So he slowly retreated. This kind of retreat seemed to have happened many times when facing Batman. The other side's figure slowly overlapped in Bane's eyes. On the garbage mountain, in the slaughter swamp, at this moment. He used different methods to escape and retreat, but Batman just stood there, always like this. It was so unacceptable, but it didn't matter. He was a patient hunter, the city belonged to Batman, and he had countless opportunities to fail, but as long as he won once, just once, the city would change hands. Even though he failed so many times and was forced back by Batman again and again, Bane never doubted that he could not take the city. Even though he failed so many times, he never doubted himself. He repeatedly emphasized to himself in his heart. He said, "We will meet again, Batman. I am a necessary evil, Batman." Chen Dao understood what Bane said. In some philosophical theories, the state social system is considered a necessary evil because it restricts absolute freedom. The system is essentially the suppression and restriction of personal freedom, the suppression, punishment and deterrence of individual evil, and it suppresses the animal side of human nature. But the power of the system is given by the people, while Bane calls it a necessary evil, which on the surface is a just reason for his evil deeds, as if his theory is no different from the dark bondage of the Riddler and the bad day of the Joker. But in fact, Bane, who said this, tacitly assumed that he represented a just system and order, the order in the cruel world that he learned and got used to in the prison where he was born. Therefore, for Bane, all his actions are not a challenge to the existing order, but a collision between one order and another. He killed people, he robbed nuclear bombs, and he did all kinds of bad things, but he knew that he was an orderly citizen, and he followed his own order. But obviously, his necessary evil skipped the most important link of being given power by the people, and he was the most thorough dictator. Chen Dao was speechless that he understood Bane's meaning and saw through his nature in just 2 sentences. Can normal people really understand Bane's incoherent words? Maybe I'm not that normal either. Chen Dao thought so. He tried to turn his head away and pretend that he didn't understand what Bane was saying at all, but his clear eyes at that moment had already let Bane know what he was saying. Bane's face under the mask grinned. But soon he couldn't smile anymore. Yes, we will meet soon, and faster than you think, Bane. Chen Dao said. You also heard the person on the phone said to you, your 3 men, the 3 men who grew up with you and fought out of prison together, the Birdman, the Caveman and the Zombie. I have captured them all. Bane's slow retreat paused. So do you understand? Now the situation has changed. Bane, my enemy with extraordinary brute force, I hope you can figure it out, the offensive and defensive situation has reversed. Quote. You can no longer come and go as you please. Quote. Chen Dao told him. 4 days. 4 days later, I will see you in Arkham Asylum. Hehehehe. Chen Dao laughed. Don't worry, I am definitely not a villain without bottom line. You know, you are the villain in the story, the kind of urban legend that parents use to scare their children. I am a decent superhero and I won't do such things as killing people. Killer Croc standing next to him tried to suppress the urge to roll his eyes, and then suddenly shuddered again, turned his head sharply, and dared not look at Chen Dao again. If you don't come, I won't do anything particularly bad to them. After all, I'm not a demon. Chen Dao told Bane. I will only chop them up bit by bit. Have you heard of the Lazarus Pool? The Fountain of Youth, I promise you that they will never die. Of course, you can bring your troops and men with you at that time, huh? If you think those superstitious and blind criminals, simple-minded musclemen and killers can be of use, you can bring them all, if the existence of this group of cheerleaders can give you a little confidence. Quote. 4 days later, Chen Dao asked. Bane was silent. 4 days later, he said. While Bane and Chen Dao were happily chatting, the Joker stood alone by the side. Poison Ivy was still reinforcing Harley Quinn's cocoon, while Deadshot and the Cheshire Cat bandaged the wounds of the Arkham people lying on the ground. No one could guarantee that they would not be injured in such a chaotic battlefield, and the Arkham people were not without losses. Although the most important ones would not be finished in a battle of this level, those ordinary villains whose levels were difficult to describe were not necessarily the same. A madman from Arkham named Hausha just took his last breath. He was a paranoid maniac who always fantasized that he was a swordsman master from the last century. Then it was obvious that the muscle claw assassin of the Court of Owls used his balloon-like muscles to teach him what real swordsmanship was. Before he died, this guy was shouting, real swordsmanship is the technique of splitting a person in half. Then he died calmly. Born from madness and died from madness, it can be regarded as a consistent ending. Everyone seemed to be busy negotiating, busy dying suddenly, busy using plants to stick to their besties. No one noticed him, no one noticed the Joker. His eyes swept over everyone at the scene, and what made the Joker sad was that from beginning to end, Batman's eyes were full of Bane, and he didn't even look at him. The malice in the Joker's eyes became stronger. But he didn't do anything in the end. Chen Dao made sure that the Joker always appeared in his peripheral vision until he and Bane disappeared at the corner of the street. He finally breathed a sigh of relief. Batman calls Robin. Chen Dao pressed his finger on the communication beside his ear. Is there anything unusual? He made plans for most things. Robin's main defense was the Scarecrow, but he definitely had other expected targets. But fortunately, everything was calm. After getting Robin's answer without any abnormality, Chen Dao fell into deep thought. Oh my god, they're gone, Batman. Penguin wiped the sweat from his head. Today is really. But before he could finish his words, he was pulled to the other side by Chen Dao. Oswald, I have a question for you. Penguin heard the other party say. You told me before that you sold a nuclear bomb for $500 million, and the remaining one was stolen by Bane, right? Penguin said. Yes, that's right, what's wrong? Who is the buyer of that nuclear bomb? I will not leak the customer's information to you, a superhero. Penguin originally wanted to say this righteously, but the tough words just came to his lips and wilted immediately before they came out. That happened 4 or 5 years ago. A man in a trench coat with a London accent, Oswald said. He was not from Gotham. He was from outside and spoke very arrogantly. He bought it immediately. Are you sure he took the nuclear bomb away? At least he took it away from Gotham, said the Penguin. Chen Dao finally felt a little relieved. He walked to the middle of the large group of defeated claws. Warning, it has been detected that you have an anchoring item, the broken leg of the claw. The broken hand of the claw. Half of the buttocks of the claw. The brain of the claw. He picked and chose among the corpses, as simple as a vegetable farmer harvesting his own farmland, with a bright and cheerful smile on his face. Although most of these claws provided some messy ordinary garbage Batman, they still provided a lot of crisis energy, and occasionally, some valuable gold could be found in the garbage. He held a claw's head in his hand. Crisis energy converted. Total, 123. Crisis energy units you currently hold, 207. Warning, downloading targetable Batman files. Claw Bat. Danger level, E. In a dark multiverse, Bruce Wayne replaced Dick Grayson and became the Claw of the Court of Owls. After becoming Batman, Bruce Wayne found himself helpless against the numerous criminal activities in Gotham. The Court of Owls offered him an olive branch and led him to fall. Bruce Wayne gradually realized that if you want to fight the darkness of this city, you must completely become him first. Closing square bracket. What does Chen Dao value? It's amber gold. Do you want to consume 19 units of crisis energy immediately to synchronize? But now is not the time to transform on the spot. Chen Dao plans to put it aside for now. He continued to swim in the farmland, harvesting more and more crisis energy. But ordinary people didn't understand what Chen Dao was doing, so everyone just watched Batman walk into the pile of corpses, touching left and right, and occasionally putting the broken hands and feet to his nose to smell them. Is it really okay? I don't think he looks like a normal person. Penguin whispered to Deadshot, I think Batman has gone crazy. Deadshot glanced at him sideways and rolled his eyes. Quote. Lincoln March was also shocked by this situation. He walked over hesitantly. Ah, you're good. Chen Dao patted his shoulder with satisfaction and threw a skeleton aside. He walked towards Lincoln March. Let's go, follow me back to the Batcave. We are allies now. The claw mask in his hand fell off. Under the effect of amber gold, he did not die, but was grimly baring his teeth. Lincoln March was sure that this was a certain generation of the Wayne family's ancestor. He didn't know what to say. Mr. Freeze walked up to Chen Dao and said, What are you going to do with us? He was bruised, and half of his armor was torn by a huge wound. A claw slashed him. Although it did not cause fatal injuries, it was still dangerous. He looked at the Arkham people who were sitting or lying on the ground. Basic chip control can't allow them to exert their maximum combat effectiveness. That's right, so we have to let the lunatics in Arkham exert some subjective initiative. Mr. Freeze nodded. This made sense. For example, Firefly, a firefly that was controlled by the mind and kicked around and sprayed with a flamethrower, could not be compared with a super arsonist who had a brain and could formulate strategies. Then, if we plan to exert the true power of the Arkham people, we should rule them with an iron fist and let them know that you are the king of criminals. Mr. Freeze answered in his heart, just like training a dog, train these lunatics. Mr. Freeze's weakness was too obvious, so he never became the leader of the Arkham people. But this did not prevent him from thinking about what he should do if he wanted to lead the entire Arkham Asylum. For these lunatics, you can only subdue them if you are more fierce, more evil, and more crazy than them. They are all hopeless psychopaths, and can only be controlled by fear and I understand that if we want to control the criminals in Arkham, we should start by curing their madness. This answer suddenly interrupted the picture of the Arkham Conqueror Corps that Mr. Freeze had originally imagined, just like the TV was broadcasting the last program and suddenly the power went out. What did you say? The third-generation Robin Tim sat in the seat that originally belonged to Batman in front of the Batcomputer in the Batcave. Nothing happened tonight. He had been checking the surveillance for 3 hours. He had even done 1,700 push-ups in front of the computer because he was bored. Still had energy to spare. This young, strong, explosive body seemed to never feel tired. After years of training and persistent practice, it was ready to face all challenges. It was so funny, there was no challenge at all. Tim was discouraged. JPG. He stared blankly at the surveillance that seemed to have not changed at all, and began to think uncontrollably. Is there a possibility that the Arkham villains suddenly formed a group to attack the Batcave? Tim knew that this was impossible, but it did not prevent him from imagining that kind of scene. Many Arkham villains formed a group to invade. Batman was surrounded and kicked in a circle, and the powerful third-generation Robin turned the tide. He knocked down the Riddler with 1 punch, knocked down the Scarecrow with 2 punches, Mr. Freeze and Firefly fled, Killer Croc knelt down and begged for mercy, the human-faced Bat was stepped on by him, Dr. Pigface was grabbed by his head and slapped left and right, and both faces of Two-Face showed a look of horror. He knocked down the Clayface, a monster with superpowers, in a few seconds, then turned around and kicked Dr. Phosphorus in the heart, knocked down the Skeleton Man, kicked his skull fiercely, and then took out a bottle of solution and poured it on him. In the smoke of the other party's screams, Alfred patted his shoulder with relief and gave him a loving hug. The bruised Batman took off his clothes and gave them to him, and then said, "From now on, you will inherit the mantle of Batman." The fantasy scene was so beautiful that Tim couldn't help laughing. But he soon woke up and looked around. Fortunately, no one saw it. He coughed lightly and sat up straight again. He, Tim, is the most reliable person in Gotham and will always stick to his duties. He patted his cheek. Stop thinking about these nonsense. How could something like the Arkham villains invading the Batcave happen? He shook his head. Although this is not the main base under Wayne Manor, it is also one of Batman's largest sub-bases in Gotham City. Whether it is security or scale, it is definitely strong enough. Oh, it's Batman and his friends who are back. Tim noticed the access control authentication submitted on the Batcomputer. He immediately opened it, then jumped directly over the huge mechanical dinosaur in the center of the hall, ran to the entrance, and opened the door. In this way, Batman can see his face the first time he comes down the corridor. Bang! Tim closed the door directly. Ha ha, there's something wrong with my eyes. He leaned against the thickened iron door for 2 seconds, then started laughing, gasping for breath. Just kidding, the fantasy scene reflected in reality or something. What kind of joke is that? Robin, open the door quickly, what's going on? Batman's voice came from outside the door, and Tim took a deep breath. Okay. He opened the door, and Mr. Freeze's big head with red glasses immediately appeared in front of him. He subconsciously punched him, and the next second he was hit by Mr. Freeze's cold finger. I hope you know what politeness is. Tim groaned in pain and immediately retracted his hand. He moved his fingers. Mr. Freeze is a supernatural human with a body temperature of at least -100 below zero, which means that if he actively releases cold air, even the simplest contact can freeze people. Tim's training made him retract his fist in advance before he actually came into contact, but he was still bitten by the cold air. Mr. Freeze ignored Tim, who was in a daze. He walked past him and went straight in. Warning, invasion detected. The huge mechanical dinosaur just started to start and immediately turned off the engine under Batman's control. Tim numbly watched many Arkham villains file into the Batcave, just like elementary school students returning from a spring outing swarming off the big bus and returning to school. Why can you come in so familiarly and sit on the sofa in the rest area next to it? Tim was almost confused by the attitude of these Arkham Asylum felons who were like returning to their hometown. He saw Flamingo and Scarecrow walking hand in hand, side by side, and then lying straight on the sofa together, like 2 elegant salted fish, and they didn't even look at him sideways when they passed by. Then the next second, the 2 of them were sat on by Two-Face and Firefly, and Two-Face's butt was directly pressed on Flamingo's hooked nose, and this professional killer who liked to wear pink had a dull expression on his face, and didn't even hum. ? Oh, Tim finally realized that something was wrong. He shouldn't be so slow. He just didn't react for a while. These guys don't look like they have self-awareness. Dr. Phosphorus, the burning skeleton, came in last. Tim saw Batman wave his hand and a wave of black sand swirled around his skull. Dr. Phosphorus is special. The phosphorus burning all over his body will make all the chips invalid, so I have to manually change his brain waves constantly. It's hard to imagine that he still has a brain to control after he has become like this. Tim heard Batman say, "Okay, Batman." Tim slapped his head with a headache. "I roughly know how you operate it." Tim is not stupid, but quite smart, and he is the most talented detective generation of Robin in the Bat family. Even though Chen Dao didn't tell him anything about his plan, he still quickly deduced most of the things after seeing the situation in front of him. But this made him even more angry. Our third-generation Robin beat his chest and stamped his feet, feeling heartbroken. "I can't believe, Batman, you actually betrayed me again. You deliberately didn't tell me the plan. How can you do this? I'm your Robin, your Robin. You can't always leave me." Tim kept chattering. Batman looked away. Tim knew that was a sign of guilt. "Look at me, Tisk." Tim turned his head and saw Mr. Freeze pouring him a cup of coffee. With a pinch of his hand, the coffee froze into ice chips, and then he poured it into his mouth and chewed it. "Make one for me too." Harley Quinn stood beside him and handed her coffee to him, and Mr. Freeze helped her cool it. Killer Croc, Poison Ivy, and Ventriloquist, these Arkham people who joined Batman at the beginning and therefore remained conscious, were squatting beside him and watching with interest. Tim stopped talking sullenly. Then he turned his head to look at the Clayface next to Batman, who was obviously also conscious. "What's going on with you, Bosso?" "Bosso Carol, the original name of Clayface." "I'm not Bosso Carol," Clayface replied. His huge body quickly shrank back, and a set of Robin uniforms quickly transformed on his body. "I am Batman's favorite Robin." Tim was stunned. "Who am I? Where am I? Is this really the Batcave?" Tim was lost in thought. A violent brainstorm swept through his mind. The mystery of the Big Bang was repeated in his 1.4 kilograms human brain in just a few seconds. Tim felt a burst of steam burst out of his head. Chen Dao pulled him aside awkwardly. "This is a necessary method, just like an irresistible social engagement," he explained. Basso Carol, Clayface's real name, is a complete histrionic personality. I don't know if you fully understand his nature. I know very well, Batman. I fully understand the decision you made. I don't care. Tim took 2 deep breaths and barely regained his sanity. "Remember the first time we faced him? He pretended that he would be restrained by electric current, and then performed a lifelike death. Before that, he disguised himself as various people in Gotham City." Chen Dao added, "Yes, another kind of madness that cannot be deduced by common sense. Bosso Carol has no purpose, his only purpose is to play a role. And the ability to transform brought to him by his superpowers can make him the best actor in the world." He continued in a low voice, "Under that body, his life is empty. After the accident, Bosso Carol, this person, it completely disappeared, and what remained was only a body driven by a broken self in pursuit of pure performance." Upper-class gentlemen, sanitation workers sweeping the roadside, women, men, children eating lollipops, school teachers, doctors, no matter what the role is, as long as it can make Bosso Caro feel challenging, he will start to play these people in the next period of time. He will beat the original owner up, and then throw him somewhere far away from Gotham and messy, and then replace him until the original owner comes back. Chen Dao said, "He is pursuing an acting career, so I will just give him a script that is challenging enough." Tim looked at the other party. There was a small performance booklet stuck on his huge palm. Tim glanced down and saw that it was written, "From Arkham to the Batcave, on how to become Batman's favorite Robin." The subtitle below is, "Bosso Caro's Youth Robin Diary, A Righteous Life Does Not Need Explanation." On the back was written, "How did Batman's favorite Robin become a man? What super rules do you need to follow to become Robin? How do you win Batman's favor and make him regard you as his only one?" The answer is all in this book. Everyone can become Robin. Just read this great book. Tim felt that he should be angry. He should have every reason to be angry. But strangely, the anger seemed to be suppressed by something else, so it didn't surge in his heart at all. He glanced at the book. This book was written by Batman. I don't really want to know what's written on it. Has this book been written before? Yes, that's right, Chen Dao answered him. He was still immersed in his plan to manipulate the clayface through various despicable means. I have written it before. As early as when I went to deal with the ventriloquist, I thought about how to manipulate the clayface. For these mentally ill lunatics, the core operating ideas are different, but they are in the same vein. He added, this book is written specifically to target Basikaro's weaknesses. Everything in it is what Robin would do. Tim was no longer in the mood to listen to Batman continue. You have to show me this booklet later, he said righteously. I must criticize it deeply. Chen Dao didn't understand what the other party was thinking, so he nodded and said, okay. I'll open it on the Batcomputer and show it to you later. I want one too. I want one too. Harley Quinn raised her hand excitedly. Make one for me too. She put on a boxing posture and laughed twice. The first female Robin in history, Harley Quinn's Robin Career Diary. Stay tuned, it's serialized. Silence. Poison Ivy, a good friend, pulled the corner of Harley Quinn's clothes in Tim's murderous eyes. Why are you pulling me? I want Wu. Harley Quinn's words were blocked by a bunch of plants controlled by Poison Ivy before she finished speaking. She smiled apologetically at Tim and made a gesture for you to continue. Chen Dao ignored the little actions between them. He gave a few brief commands to the Batcomputer, and then dozens of hidden lift-type transparent glass cages rose from the basement of the Batcave hall. He called Killer Croc, Ventriloquist and Harley and asked them to stuff all the villains controlled by the chip in one by one. While they were working, he made a video call to Alfred. Batman to Penny 1. How long will it take for the Claw assassins to be transported back? Another hour and a half. Alfred, who was facing the painting, pulled the joystick, and the mechanical arm of the Batplane grabbed a bunch of twitching, missing limbs and unlucky claws like a doll in a doll machine. There are too many of them. I have to grab them for a while. The old housekeeper sighed. I can't believe I have to put them all together later. I haven't played with assembly toys for more than 60 years since I threw the jigsaw puzzle aside at the age of 4. And now I have to put together hundreds of incomplete limbs at once. Quote. Hard work, Chen Dao said. It's not hard. This is what I should do, sir. Alfred shook his head and said, they can help you, right? These claws can become your strength and help you fight Bane, even if it only consumes a little of his physical strength. He said, they can make you no longer have wounds, right? Yes, Chen Dao answered him, the claws are indeed a fighting force that cannot be ignored. They are very useful. Then what I did is meaningful. Alfred said, about that 4 days later, promise me that you must return safely, okay? Chen Dao was silent for a while. Alfred is not the kind of person who will repeatedly emphasize to others what he has paid, but today he is out of character. He knows what the other party is thinking. The old butler just wants to use his own efforts to catch his poor little Bruce. The old man just stubbornly wants to get a promise to return safely. Whether this promise can be fulfilled or not, it is not something he can decide. He just wants this promise. I will, Chen Dao assured him. We agreed to live in seclusion, remember? I promised you. We will go to Fiji, or the Hawaiian Islands, or Metropolis, a place where no one knows us, after the Gotham incident is over. I will retire with you. Batman promised. I will return safely. I have a lot of villains from Arkham Asylum now, they will go before me. Chen Dao said. With them consuming Bane's physical strength, I will not lose. Alfred lowered his head slightly, making it difficult to see the expression on his face, and then the next moment, it turned into a bright smile like the clear sky. Okay, we agreed. Bruce, you must keep your promise. Okay. They hung up the call. Chen Dao took a deep breath, stood up, and walked into one of the transparent cages. He snapped his fingers, and the prisoner in the cage was immediately released from the control of the chip. Harvey Dent, Two-Face, old friend. Chen Dao said, I need your help. Don't even think about it. Even if I, Two-Face, die of boredom and jump off from Arkham, I won't help Batman at all. Chen Dao narrowed his eyes. It's not up to you. He. It is about 7 p.m. in the Batcave. Many Arkham villains have been stuffed into the transparent prison. As soon as Chen Dao released the chip control for them, they immediately began to perform what is called a group of demons dancing wildly. What are you doing? Be quiet, Harley Quinn pretended to be a prison guard between the cages. She swung a baseball bat and knocked on the transparent tempered glass twice. Want to fight with me? Ah, girl. Flamingo jumped up and lay on the glass, licking it with her tongue and howling, you are just a follower of the Joker. Sooner or later, I will bite your face. Harley was furious. Don't mention it in front of me. She tried to rush up to open the transparent prison and rush in to fight with Flamingo, but before that, she was easily swept away by poison ivy with vines. Well, bat coffee tastes really good, she said while drinking coffee leisurely, although it is made from the corpse of coffee beans. Behind her, Harley Quinn, who was held upside down in the air, punched and kicked the air. Killer Croc and Mr. Freeze sat together playing poker. Judging from the pile of banknotes next to Mr. Freeze, Killer Croc seemed to have lost a lot. Glad that you like it. The ventriloquist was attentive, holding the coffee pot next to him. Robin, thank you for telling me where the coffee is. Tim sat next to him with an unhappy look on his face. I can't believe I'll be drinking coffee in the Batcave one day. Penguin sat next to him, with a small plate of snacks in front of him. He threw a macaron into his mouth. In the past, I came here when I was beaten black and blue. Not like now. He turned his head to Robin and said, Hey, Wonder Boy, the snacks are finished, go get some more. He saw the other party clenched his fists, so he immediately said, Hey, what do you want to do? Batman asked you to treat us well. Tim finally went to get the snacks angrily. I wish you will die of snacks soon. After he left, Penguin said, God, he really went, I didn't expect him to be so obedient. After all, I think we are now in the Justice Camp. Poison Ivy replied with great satisfaction. This is exactly what I thought about before, you know, the prodigal son returns, washes his hands, and the American dream. She opened her hands. I am very sure that we are devoting ourselves to the cause of justice. Penguin took a sip of coffee, and behind them were the howling demons and monsters. He said, I'm not sure we. But he was interrupted before he could finish his words. The violent screams resounded throughout the Batcave. The hoarse wailing scared the coffee out of Penguin's hooked nose. He coughed loudly, then turned his head and was horrified to find that Batman was directly pressing the red-hot iron against Two-Face's face with a perverted and twisted smile on his face. Ha 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 ha. Hiss, Penguin couldn't help but take a breath. The originally chaotic hall gradually quieted down, and many Arkham villains who were still making noises just now looked at each other, and slowly stopped their noisy actions in embarrassment. Penguin swallowed his saliva. He whispered to Poison Ivy, Are you sure we are doing a just cause? Chen Dao put the red-hot iron back into the hot brazier, and then said to Two-Face. Okay, now you are no longer Two-Face. From now on, your name is Three-Face. He brought a mirror and reflected the poor Two-Face handcuffed to the seat. It should be the former Two-Face. Now a new scar has been burned on his face, completely covering his original dark green scar, making his face appear in 3 completely different colors. He took out something from his belt and stuffed it into Harvey Dent's hand. This is a 3-sided dice. If you throw 1, you kill me. If you throw 2, you let me live. If you throw 3, let's sit down together and have a cup of coffee and hot chocolate, and then discuss how to deal with Bane. Oh, by the way. The Penguin watched him take out a bottle of fear gas with a lethal dose and spray it directly on Two-Face's face. I almost forgot, lubricant. Chen Dao felt that the fear gas was really easy to use. When training the villains, once the lubricant was used, things became simple all of a sudden. Hey, my fear gas is not used like that. The Scarecrow, who was imprisoned in another transparent cell, opened his mouth and began to protest. But before he could finish his words, he fell to the ground with a bang like a mummy as Chen Dao snapped his fingers. The Mad Hatter's chip deprived him of control of his body. The Penguin saw his eyes rolling around, but he couldn't say a word. I. Chen Dao untied the handcuffs for Two-Face. Two-Face hesitated for a long time, then took the dice tremblingly. He threw it, and unfortunately threw 1. So he jumped up immediately. I'll kill you. What bad luck. Chen Dao's half-arm turned into the forelimbs of a dinosaur, and he knocked him to the ground with a fist, then jumped up, stepped on and kicked him in the face, and after a physical memory disappearance, Two-Face was pressed back to his seat, and Chen Dao snatched the 3-sided dice. He continued to take out the branding iron from the brazier, gestured at the position, and aimed it at Two-Face's face. Sizzle. Two-Face's screams resounded throughout the cave again, and the Arkham lunatics took a breath of cold air together, and then sat quietly on the floor of their cells. This is a 4-sided dice. As usual, if you throw 1, throw 2, throw 4, we will go against Bane together. Two-Face threw a 1. What bad luck. Ah, it's a firefly. Penguin knew that he was a super pyromaniac who couldn't control his desire to burn everything around him to ashes, but now fire had become his biggest fear. Under the effect of fear toxin, he began to have a severe fear of fire, but soon, he suffered a textbook desensitization therapy. It's so perverted. Killer Croc and Mr. Freeze put down their playing cards and walked to the side of Penguin. They watched Batman spray a little fear gas on the face of this villain, then immediately rode on the opposite side and started to shoot left and right repeatedly, and then started to connect the power to another villain and started to shock him directly, and several people shuddered together. To be honest, are we really in the camp of justice? I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.